Chapter 1. Pa. The basketball in Xiao Chen's hand was slapped away. What followed was a burst of cheers from the audience. However, the cheers were extremely harsh in Xiao Chen's ears. A block. This almost humiliating way of stealing the ball made Xiao Chen stare at Qin Jinpeng and gasp for breath. Inner force. Qin Jinpeng actually used inner force privately. Under normal circumstances, martial artists would not use inner force. If it was used in an ordinary friendly basketball match, what was the point? Unless the opponent took the initiative to provoke them, martial artists generally disdained to use inner force to bully others. Xiao Chen's face was gloomy as he looked at Qin Jinpeng, who passed by him and took the basketball away. He even forgot about his swollen palm. This was his former underling. How dare he use underhanded tricks on me in a basketball match? Beep, accompanied by the whistle, there was another cheer outside the court. Qin Jinpeng had successfully shot the ball at the last moment. Inner force again. Only Xiao Chen could see that at such a long distance, with Qin Jinpeng's strength, he had to use inner force to shoot the ball successfully. Qin Jinpeng. You're good. Even though Xiao Chen's psychological quality was very strong, the consecutive blows still made his chest heave up and down. He was furious. What are you looking at? Do you still think you're the Xiao Chen from before? You've been kicked out of your family. Instead of finding a place to hide, you actually ran to the court to be abused. Do you really think you're a basketball god? If I hadn't been playing infernal affairs and bribed my teammates to deliberately lose to you, who do you think you are? Qin Jinpeng looked at Xiao Chen with ridicule. His gaze was high and mighty, as if he was looking at an ant. Fake. No wonder he lost so badly. I thought Xiao Chen was really a basketball god. It turned out to be fake. Xiao Chen's teammates seemed to understand something after listening to Qin Jinpeng's words and began to ridicule him. Scumbag, always playing fake. I was wondering why Xiao Chen's skills were so bad today. Qin Jinpeng intercepted the ball consecutively. He's really trash. If it were in the past, these people really wouldn't dare to do anything to Xiao Chen. Although Xiao Chen was currently studying in an aristocratic school and these people's families were also rich or noble, compared to the Xiao family, one of the 4 major families in Songning City, it was a world of difference. However, now that Xiao Chen had been kicked out of the Xiao family and was a thorn in the side of the Qing family, the head of the 4 major families, these people followed suit regardless of whether what Qin Jinpeng said was true or false. Xiao Chen looked coldly at the people on the court, but he had nothing to say. Should I tell them that Qin Jinpeng's skills were actually not as good as mine and that he could only win because he used inner force? But who would believe it? How many of these people knew about inner force? Even if they knew, who could stand up for him at this moment? He was no longer the young master of the Xiao family, the son of the young master of the Xiao family. The younger brother of the past had stepped on his head. Xiao Chen shook his head. Why? Why was he still kicked out of the Xiao family? Was it because he couldn't practice inner force? But who could see the hard work that Xiao Chen had put in all these years since he was young? Xiao Chen was the only son of the young master of the Xiao family, Xiao Feng. But because of his physique, he couldn't practice inner force. All these years, Xiao Chen had withstood huge pressure. The successors of the 4 major families were all outstanding martial artists. Only martial artists could suppress the heroes and push a family to a higher level. In front of others, Xiao Chen had no choice but to act like a hedonistic young master, spending money like it was dirt. Only by doing so could he protect himself. A useless successor was something that the other 3 major clans and 5 minor clans would be happy to see. Without the ability to protect himself, he had to make others think that he was harmless to them. When he was young, he practiced hard every day for more than 10 years. Every night when it was quiet, the sound of training could be heard in the basement of the Xiao family's Xiao Chen room. However, Xiao Chen's hard work didn't get rewarded by the heavens. His father went missing, he was kicked out of the family, and the Qing family broke off the engagement. And he was still a good-for-nothing who couldn't protect himself. Xiao Chen took a deep breath. No matter whether he acted harmless in the past or not, at this moment, the old master of the Qing family hated him. There were many people who threw stones at him when he was down. The basketball game ended, and the people around him had already dispersed. The people who supported the Qin family surrounded Qin Jinping and went to celebrate together. Xiao Qin. A nervous but pleasant voice appeared in front of Xiao Qin, accompanied by a beautiful figure. This was a young girl wearing a school uniform that was unusually plain, but all of this could not conceal her natural beauty. Kerlin. Xiao Qin looked at the girl in front of him, who was known as the commoner campus belle. Of course, she was also the target of Xiao Chen's pursuit and harassment in the past. Actually, speaking of which, Xiao Chen could be considered as Lin Kuer's savior. Lin Kuer had been harassed by some ruffians in the alleyway behind the school, and coincidentally, Xiao Chen, who was passing by, had seen it. Thus, he had instructed Qin Jinping to beat up those ruffians, and thus, the scene of a hero saving the damsel in distress had played out. Originally, Kerlin was very grateful to Xiao Chen, but she didn't expect that the next day, Xiao Chen began to pursue Kerlin at school. Love letters and roses made Kerlin, who only wanted to study hard, collapse. Therefore, she could only hide from Xiao Chen. Fortunately, Xiao Chen was only pretending to be a playboy, so he didn't do anything too excessive. However, when Kerlin took the initiative to look for him, it still made Xiao Chen a little surprised. I heard that you were expelled from your family, and your engagement was broken off. Kerlin's face was flushed. She stuttered, and her breathing was a little rushed. But, don't be sad and give up on yourself. You work hard now, study hard, and you can still be successful in the future, then I can let you chase me. After saying this, Kerlin seemed to have exhausted all the strength in her body. Her forehead was also sweating, and her delicate face was full of redness. She lowered her head and didn't dare to look at Xiao Chen again. She turned around and ran away quickly, looking at Kerlin who was far away. Xiao Chen couldn't help but smile bitterly. While sighing at Kerlin's naivety and kindness, he couldn't help but sigh. All these years, did I pretend to be a playboy quite well? Did she think that I would take things too hard because of this? However, what Xiao Chen didn't know was that in the school, there was already a small-scale rumor spreading. And Kerlin heard this rumor, so she plucked up the courage to look for Xiao Chen. To the simple and honest Lin Kuer, how much courage did she have to expend to say such words? Chapter 2. Xiao Chen touched his hungry stomach due to the strenuous exercise. He wanted to go to the school cafeteria to eat something, but Xiao Chen stopped as soon as he took a step. The food in the school cafeteria was more expensive. Xiao Chen was no longer the young master of the Xiao family. His bank card was frozen, and his sports car was driven away by the family. Xiao Chen's ears were still echoing with what his second uncle said at noon. You're no longer a member of the Xiao family. You've been kicked out of the Xiao family. Everything in the Xiao family no longer belongs to you. Are these words said by my own second uncle? Even if I've been kicked out of the Xiao family, there's no need to be so ruthless, right? At this moment, Xiao Chen seemed to understand something. Is this the so-called big family has no kinship? However, Xiao Chen didn't expect that this scene would appear in the Xiao family. He turned around and walked to the row of food stalls in front of the school gate. In the past, Xiao Chen disdained to come here to eat. The school's high-class restaurant was comparable to the culinary skills of a five-star hotel. Of course, the price was not cheap. It was just that the previous Xiao Chen had no concept of money. Classmate, what do you want to eat? The owner of the food stall greeted Xiao Chen enthusiastically. However, even if he was enthusiastic, Xiao Chen was confused by the dazzling fast food names in front of him. He had never eaten these strange things before. What is barbecued meat mixed with rice? Isn't barbecued meat a Western cuisine? How can it be mixed with rice? I'll have seafood fried noodles. Xiao Chen could only choose a food that looked familiar. Okay, wait a moment. It'll be ready soon. The owner responded and called the chef behind him to start working. Soon, the fried noodles were served. Xiao Chen looked at the strange seafood fried noodles in front of him. The so-called seafood was just a few small pieces of shredded squid scattered on the noodles. This made Xiao Chen feel like he didn't know where to start. However, the taste seemed to be good. The hungry Xiao Chen couldn't care less. He picked up the chopsticks and began to stuff food into his mouth. Moreover, Xiao Chen was not really a playboy. It was just that he did not have the opportunity to eat these things in the past. Huh? Isn't this Xiao Chen? Why did you come to this roadside stall to eat? Is this the bad taste of rich people? An ear-piercing voice was heard. This voice was somewhat familiar. Xiao Chen immediately recognized it as Chao Yuliang's voice. Just like Xiao Chen and Qin Jinpeng, Chao Yuliang was a disciple of the 4 big families and 5 small families of Songning City. However, the Chao family and the Shao family had always been at odds with each other, causing Chao Yuliang and Xiao Chen to often be at loggerheads with each other. However, Chao Yuliang was the same as Xiao Chen, a good-for-nothing young master who couldn't cultivate inner strength. After looking at Chao Yuliang coldly, Xiao Chen stood up and asked, "Boss, how much is it?" A wise man knew better than to fight when the odds were against him. Xiao Chen was kicked out of the family. Naturally, he didn't want to argue with Chao Yuliang anymore. Moreover, the purpose of Chao Yuliang coming here was probably to provoke him and humiliate him. Naturally, Xiao Chen wouldn't let him succeed. "Seafood fried noodles, 10 yuan. The boss said. "Okay." Xiao Chen reached for his wallet, but when his hand touched his pocket, his face suddenly changed. "My wallet is gone. Did I lose it when I was playing basketball just now?" "Ha. Why? Xiao Chen doesn't want to pay? Could it be that he is here to eat and dash? But it's no wonder. In the past, Qin Jinpeng paid the bill. Why don't I help you call him?" Chao Yuliang looked at Xiao Chen playfully and pretended to take out his phone. "Young Master Chao, Xiao Chen wants to swipe his card." With Xiao Chen's identity, how can he bring cash when he goes out? One of Chao Yuliang's followers said. Yeah, but unfortunately, Xiao Chen, you can't swipe your diamond credit card here." Another follower said. "Boss. I lost my wallet. Can I give it to you next time?" Xiao Chen took a deep breath and warned himself in his heart. When a tiger falls to the plains, he will be bullied by dogs. Just ignore them. The boss saw Xiao Chen's embarrassed look. It seemed that he really had a difficult situation. His clothes didn't look like a person who cheated others to eat and drink. He thought that he didn't have much money anyway, so he said, "It's okay. I will give it to you next time." "Boss, you can't do this. You are a scumbag who connives to eat and dash. Look at this brat, he's dressed like a dog. One look and I know he's a swindler." Chao Yuliang blocked Xiao Chen's path. Yeah, boss. You can't condone this kind of person who eats and dashes. Think about it. If he doesn't pay for the meal, then we also say that we didn't bring money after the meal. Does it mean that we don't have to pay? Do you still want to do your business? Chao Yuliang's followers also echoed this. The boss hesitated after hearing Chao Yuliang and his followers' words. These people were obviously looking for trouble. If he really let Xiao Chen go, then they would probably have to eat a meal without paying. Then, his business for the day would be in vain. "Boss, I will pay his bill." A cold voice sounded. This voice made Xiao Chen's body tremble. It was Qing Menjiang, the eldest daughter of the Qing family, the head of Songning's 4 major aristocratic families and 5 small aristocratic families. However, she also had another identity, which was Xiao Chen's fiancée. It should be said that she was his ex-fiancée. "Menjiang, although he used to be your fiancé, he has been kicked out of the Xiao family. How can you pay for him?" Chao Yuliang's face changed slightly. He didn't expect Qing Menjiang to cause trouble at this time. As Qing Menjiang's pursuer, this wasn't what he wanted to see. "Of course, I'm not asking you to be unsympathetic, but if your Qing family knows about this, Grandpa Qing will definitely. Qing Menjing didn't care about Chow Yuliang at all. She took out a 100 yuan bill from her wallet and handed it to the boss. The boss didn't dare to say anything. He took the money. When he was about to give the change, he found that Qing Menjing had turned around and left. Just give me the change, Yi Zichen said. Xiao Chen glanced at Qing Menjing's back with a complicated expression. He shook his head self-deprecatingly. At this time, he didn't care about Xiao Chen's self-esteem. No one treated him as Xiao Chen. He was just a target of ridicule. Then, what else did he have to pretend to be? After removing the previous disguise, Xiao Chen was too lazy to pretend to Chow Yuliang. Okay. The boss didn't think much about it. He directly handed the 90 yuan that he got back to Xiao Chen. Ha ha ha, you really can't be helped. You even want a woman's money? Xiao Chen, you are hopeless. If I were you, I would rather die. Chow Yuliang's voice was very loud. Perhaps he wanted to deliberately let Qing Menjing hear it. However, Qing Menjing's footsteps were light. She didn't stop at all, as if she didn't hear it. Xiao Chen looked at Chow Yuliang coldly. If you want to eat, sit down and eat. If you don't want to eat, get out of the way. A good dog doesn't block the way. What did you say? One of Chow Yuliang's underlings jumped out and pointed at Xiao Chen. He was about to make a move. Forget it. There's no point in beating a drowning dog. Let him get lost. Chow Yuliang waved his hand and took the lead to sit at a table on the side. He said, "Boss, give me a beef rice." His underlings also looked at Xiao Chen with disdain. Then, they sat beside Chow Yuliang. Xiao Chen had to admit that Chow Yuliang was better than him in some aspects. At least he knew what the store's food was. Looking at Xiao Chen's back as he left, Chow Yuliang's eyes flashed with a hint of ruthlessness. However, it was quickly concealed. Fight with me? Let's see how you can fight with me now. Chapter 3. Out of the food stall, Xiao Chen's face showed a trace of confusion. Originally, Xiao Chen thought that even if his efforts were not rewarded, he would still be the heir of the Xiao family. As long as he and Qing Menjing got married and had children, the children would be able to embark on the path of martial arts cultivation, and the Xiao family would not be considered as broken. After all, the lifespan of a martial artist was very long, and Xiao Chen's father, Xiao Feng, was a rare genius among the younger generation. When his grandson grew up, he could still wait. Therefore, after Xiao Chen had a plan, he began to disguise himself as an ignorant and incompetent playboy, flirting with girls, fighting for wealth, and indulging in debauchery. Except for the people within the Xiao family, Xiao Chen succeeded in deceiving everyone. No one would have thought that Xiao Chen would be a madman who forced himself to cultivate for more than 10 years. However, unexpectedly, his father suddenly disappeared without a trace, and Qing Menjing's uncle, the most promising member of the younger generation of the Qing family, also disappeared in the trial team led by his father. News came from the outside world that Xiao Chen's father, Xiao Feng, had caused the entire trial team to perish due to a mistake in decision-making, burying the lives of the entire trial team. Old Master Cheng was furious, and under the pressure of the Xiao family, Xiao Chen was driven out of the family in confusion. The Qing family was an ancient martial arts family, the head of the 4 big and 5 small families in Songning City. In the entire northwest region, they were one of the best. Of course, there were only a few ancient martial arts families in the entire Dexia kingdom. These families, in the local areas, were transcendent existences, established by martial arts, and passed down for hundreds of years. As for families like the Xiao family, the Qin family, and the Chao family, they had only risen in the past few decades. Although they also practiced martial arts, their heritage could not be compared to the Qing family. There were a total of 9 families in Songning City, but the rankings were not fixed. The families would be re-ranked according to the comprehensive strength of each family in a regular family meeting. However, other families would have more or less changes, but the Qing family had never changed. Therefore, being able to unite with the Qing family by marriage meant that a family would soar. The Xiao family wanted it, so did the Chao family. However, because Xiao Chen's father, Xiao Feng, and Qing Menjing's father, Qing Zhenfei, grew up together and studied under the same master, the engagement between Xiao Chen and Qing Menjing was set early. "Little brother, do you want to take a taxi?" While Xiao Chen was hesitating, a taxi stopped beside Xiao Chen. The driver probably saw Xiao Chen standing on the street like a fool, so he thought he was waiting for a taxi. Xiao Chen was slightly stunned, but he still nodded. With his current mood, he did not want to continue to stay in school. Staying in school would only lead to more ridicule. Xiao Chen also wanted to be alone and think about his future. Without his family and father, Xiao Chen had to replan his life. Just find a quiet place. Xiao Chen opened the door and got in the car. A quiet place? "Little brother, do you have something on your mind?" The taxi driver was stunned and asked. "Well, just find a place without people." Xiao Chen did not want to talk much, so he just nodded. The taxi driver did not ask anything more. He started the car and left the food stall. What Xiao Chen did not know was that shortly after the taxi left, a black Audi car followed. However, the model of the Audi was a 6L, which was relatively ordinary. If one did not have professional anti-reconnaissance abilities, it would be impossible to discover it. The taxi stopped at the Songlong mountain cliff mouth. This was a tourist attraction that had not been developed yet. After being bought by a company, it was going to be developed in the next 2 years, but now it was a deserted place. In the summer, there were couples who came here to have an affair, but now it was autumn. The cliff mouth was very windy, so it was deserted. However, this place was just right for Xiao Chen. He could calm down and feel the cold wind to clear his mind. There were too many things that happened today. He was kicked out of the family. Before he could think too much about it, he had to participate in the previously agreed friendly basketball match. Xiao Chen paid the taxi fare and sat on the edge of the cliff mouth. He looked at the bottomless cliff and fell into deep thought. What should I do in the future? Without internal energy, Xiao Chen was no different from an ordinary person. Even when he was kicked out of the Xiao family, he was even worse than an ordinary person. It turned out that I was indeed a useless young master. In the past, Xiao Chen thought that he was very smart and had deceived everyone. But now, after losing everything, Xiao Chen realized that he was just a little smart. Just as Xiao Chen fell into deep thought, suddenly, someone kicked Xiao Chen's back. F***ck. Xiao Chen cursed. His body flew directly off the cliff. Who the F***ck is so wicked? The whistling wind in his ears and the bottomless cliff made Xiao Chen's forehead instantly break out in a cold sweat. Am I going to die? Xiao Chen's eyes flashed a hint of unwillingness. Who is it that wants to kill me? The person who pushed me had internal energy. Xiao Chen could feel this. If the other party didn't use internal energy, Xiao Chen wouldn't have fallen off the cliff so easily. The place where he was sitting was more than 2 meters away from the cliff. An ordinary person could only push him a little, but it was impossible to push him off the cliff. Although Xiao Chen didn't have internal energy all these years, his body was much stronger than ordinary people. After all, this was the result of training every night. However, these had become meaningless. Looking at the bottom of the cliff that was getting closer and closer, Xiao Chen closed his eyes helplessly. Boom, a loud noise sounded. Xiao Chen only felt that his internal organs were about to be shattered. Then, he lost consciousness. After an unknown period of time, suddenly, there was a sound that made Xiao Chen's hair stand on end. This was because this sound didn't come from Xiao Chen's ears, but from Xiao Chen's head. Wake up, wake up. This voice seemed to be circling in Xiao Chen's head. Xiao Chen was shocked and jumped up subconsciously. Who? Who is it? Xiao Chen even forgot that he fell from the cliff. He didn't have time to think about why he didn't fall to his death. Instead, he looked around, trying to find the source of the voice. It's me. The somewhat old voice sounded again. Xiao Chen's face suddenly showed a horrified expression. Although Xiao Chen wasn't a timid person, as a person who practiced martial arts, He didn't know how many dead people he had seen. However, the scene in front of him had already exceeded the normal worry. You. Who are you? Where are you? Xiao Chen asked in a hurry. I'm in your body. The voice said word by word. You. Are you kidding? Xiao Chen said subconsciously. However, he still lowered his head and looked at his body to see if there was anything strange. Do you think I look like I'm joking? I'm a soul, and I'm now in your body. The voice said indifferently. Soul? My body? Possession. Possession? After Xiao Chen spat out the word, possession, his face turned ashen. Chapter 4. Xiao Chen couldn't help but be afraid. Although he hadn't experienced possession, he had more or less heard of it. Now that a soul had entered his body, if it wasn't for possession, then what was it? Possession? The voice was slightly stunned, and then it laughed with some disdain. That's a method used by the devil's sect. A body that is possessed is not the most suitable. It will cause a lot of trouble in the future. I'm just an independent existence that resides in your body. Phew. Xiao Chen breathed a sigh of relief. It seemed that this soul really wasn't going to possess him. Otherwise, why would it explain so much about possession? Moreover, after Xiao Chen calmed down, he realized that he still had independent consciousness. So he took a deep breath and asked, Then who are you, soul? Why did you choose to reside in my body? It's meaningless for you to know who I am for the time being. As for why I am residing in your body, it's because your physique is very similar to mine. When you jumped off the cliff, it happened to touch my soul, so I am residing in your body. The voice explained faintly. F***ck, physique is similar? You still want to possess me? Xiao Chen was shocked and said angrily. However, he sighed sorrowfully. I, Xiao Chen, didn't die after falling off the cliff, but am I going to be possessed and die? Xiao Chen, don't be agitated. The voice sounded again, but this time with a somewhat funny tone. You didn't die after jumping off the cliff. You have to thank me. If I didn't enter your body in mid-air, you would have fallen into a meat patty by now. You. How do you know my name? You can read minds? Xiao Chen was shocked and asked. Don't forget that I'm in your body. You can communicate with me as long as you think about it in your mind. There's no need to say it out loud. The voice continued, As for possession, I'm really not interested. Although your body is very similar to mine, it's only similar. Moreover, after I possess you, I might lose my own thoughts, or in other words, our thoughts will merge and become a new person, so that's how it is. In that case, thank you for saving my life. For some reason, perhaps because this soul was also in Xiao Chen's body, his words made Xiao Chen feel particularly sincere, as if he was not lying to him. There's no need to thank me for saving your life. I didn't save you for nothing. That voice did not care about Xiao Chen's gratitude. I saved you for myself. I have some unfulfilled wishes when I was alive, and I want you to help me fulfill them. Why? Xiao Chen's heart stirred. Sure enough, there was something going on. I knew it. You wouldn't be so kind as to save me. It turns out that you already had a plan. Oh, your father went missing, you were chased out of the family, your fiancé broke off the engagement, and you were bullied by your former lackey. TSK, it seems like you've had quite a miserable life. The voice suddenly said with a mocking tone. Holy shit. You old bastard, you peeped at my privacy. Xiao Chen was completely enraged. He had an urge to hit someone, but if he raised his fist, who would he hit? Was he going to hit himself? Wasn't that a moron? I was just casually looking. Don't worry, I don't have any bad interests. I just looked at my recent memories. The voice said indifferently, however, you have such a good physique. You were actually bullied like this. TSK, it's really sad. Old thing, what are you trying to say? Xiao Chen was so angry that he gritted his teeth, but he couldn't do anything to this soul. He was in his own body, so he couldn't hit him. Scolding him, it seemed that this old thing was thick-skinned. Even if he scolded him, he wouldn't react. Do you want to become stronger? The voice put away the previous mockery and asked temptingly. After Xiao Chen scolded him, he suddenly thought of the soul's words, such a good physique. Could it be that my physique is a good physique in his eyes? Xiao Chen wasn't stupid. Thinking of this, he asked tentatively, do you have a way to cultivate inner strength? No. The voice said very straightforwardly. Xiao Chen had an urge to go berserk. If not, why do you ask this? But, maybe there is an alternative? One can still become a powerhouse without cultivating inner strength? The voice answered his own question. You mean, you have other cultivation methods, but they can achieve the same effect as inner strength? Xiao Chen was slightly stunned and asked quickly. That's right. The voice said affirmatively, otherwise, how can I let you help me fulfill my wish? Just based on your skills? Okay. As long as you can make me stronger, in exchange, I can help you fulfill your wish. Xiao Chen hesitated slightly and made a decision. He said affirmatively, but let me say this first. If you want me to do something dangerous, I won't do it. That's not up to you. My first wish is to not accept a disciple before I die. Xiao Chen, kowtow and acknowledge me as your master first. The voice laughed and was full of wretchedness. Acknowledge me as your master? Xiao Chen was stunned and immediately understood that he was tricked. I want to acknowledge you as my master. You are my master. Whatever you want me to do, I have to do it. How is this an exchange? When did I say it was an exchange? You said it yourself. The voice said, besides, one of my wishes is to accept a disciple. You. Xiao Chen's eyes widened. He was stunned and didn't know what to say. Well, to be honest, you are my disciple and the only successor of my bloodline. How can I let you push you into the fire pit? If you acknowledge me as your master, there are only benefits and no disadvantages. The voice laughed. Okay, then I agree. Xiao Chen thought about it. In fact, he had no other choice. If he wanted to become stronger, relying on this soul was the only choice. He hadn't cultivated inner strength for more than 10 years. If there were other ways, he would have used them long ago. Okay, but I don't want to acknowledge you as my master first. Now that I can't come out of your body, you can't worship yourself. The voice was very satisfied with Xiao Chen's agreement. You can call me Master or Elder Heaven Ancestor in the future. Master, what should I do now? This cliff. How do I go back? Since Xiao Chen had accepted Elder Heaven Ancestor as his master, he naturally didn't have to worry about it. Go back, no hurry. Elder Heaven Ancestor said, it's been too long. The spiritual sense in my soul is very weak. I can temporarily replace your body and fly up the cliff, but that will use up all my remaining spiritual sense. After that, I will enter a dormant state. Chapter 5. Then what should I do if you go dormant? Xiao Chen was taken aback. However, he was secretly surprised. He could actually fly up the cliff? How high was this cliff? According to Xiao Chen's understanding, even if his father was a level 7 inner force expert, it would still be impossible for him to do this. It seemed that this master of his was really a powerful expert. It seemed that he hadn't recognized him in vain. Cultivate according to the method I taught you. The primordial qi that you cultivate, or what you call true qi, can replenish my soul and mental strength. The Elder Heaven Ancestor said, don't worry, I will wake up soon. However, this replenishment process is relatively slow. When you become a real cultivator and step into the threshold of the first level of the refinement stage, I will wake up. However, it is easy for me to wake up, but it is difficult for me to help you with this kind of thing again. Then how do I cultivate? Xiao Chen was confused and asked, also, what is primordial qi? The inner force that you mentioned is something that warriors cultivate, and primordial chi is something that we cultivators cultivate. The two are similar, but different. Most people can cultivate to become warriors, but it is not the case for cultivators. You must have spiritual roots in your body to cultivate. The elder heaven ancestor said, warriors train their bodies, and cultivators train chi. I will teach you the mantra of chi training. You just need to cultivate according to the method written above. Although the elder heaven ancestor's words sounded simple, Xiao Chen was extremely shocked. Cultivators? There are actually cultivators in existence? This was the first time he heard of this concept. However, thinking about it, with the Xiao family's heritage, it was normal that he didn't know about this. After all, the elder heaven ancestor also said that cultivators must have spiritual roots, which was rare. Yes, master. Xiao Chen was shocked and said respectfully. Although the elder heaven ancestor didn't say anything, Xiao Chen suddenly felt as if something had intruded into his mind. In an instant, a large set of mantra mnemonics and cultivation methods appeared in Xiao Chen's mind. Alright, I'm going to temporarily take over your body. As soon as the elder heaven ancestor finished speaking, Xiao Chen was shocked to find that his body was no longer under his control. However, in addition to not being able to control his own body, Xiao Chen discovered that he still had his own consciousness. In other words, he could think and see everything in front of him, but he couldn't control his own body. Elder Heaven Ancestor, is that you? Xiao Chen asked in his mind. It's me. Your body is too weak. This will consume a lot of my soul force. Kid, you really know how to cause trouble for me. Such a high cliff, it's killing me. The Elder Heaven Ancestor's words came out of Xiao Chen's mouth. This tone was indescribably strange and awkward. If I didn't fall down, would you be able to enter my body? Xiao Chen thought angrily. Hee, that's true. The Elder Heaven Ancestor said, back then, I was seriously injured and chased here. I fell off the cliff. I didn't expect that you, kid, were also thrown off the cliff. Master, seriously injured you and thrown off the cliff? What kind of expert is that? Xiao Chen was a little surprised. Just when I was injured. Let's not talk about this. It's been so long, I've almost forgotten about it. As the Elder Heaven Ancestor said this, he suddenly took a deep breath and leaped. The whole body of Xiao Chen actually flew straight up from the bottom of the cliff. Xiao Chen looked at himself in amazement. What kind of martial arts was this? Could it be that cultivators were so much stronger than warriors? Or could it be that warriors could also be like this? Was it just that he didn't know? There are thousands of paths, but they all lead to the same destination. As Xiao Chen was thinking about this, the Elder Heaven Ancestor explained to him, don't underestimate warriors. Back then, the person who knocked me off the cliff was a warrior. Hiss, Xiao Chen's feeling of being a cultivator was extinguished by the Elder Heaven Ancestor with a basin of water. Of course, if I wasn't injured, killing him would be a piece of cake. Immediately after, the words of the Elder Heaven Ancestor made Xiao Chen not know whether to laugh or cry. After the Elder Heaven Ancestor said this, Xiao Chen's feet landed firmly on the cliff. Immediately after, Xiao Chen found that he had regained control of his body. He could freely move his body. Master, you're really amazing. You actually managed to come up from such a high cliff. Xiao Chen really couldn't imagine that he had actually jumped up by himself. However, this time, the answer to Xiao Chen was silence. Master? Xiao Chen called out again. However, the answer to him was still silence. Xiao Chen was slightly stunned. Only then did he remember what the Elder Heaven Ancestor had said before. When he jumped up the cliff, his soul power would be exhausted and he would enter a dormant state. Only by cultivating his own vitality would he be able to replenish his energy and wake him up. Thinking of this, Xiao Chen secretly made up his mind that he must achieve results in his cultivation as soon as possible. Standing on the cliff again, Xiao Chen's thoughts were completely different from a few hours ago. A few hours ago, Xiao Chen was dispirited and confused. He didn't know what to do in the future. However, a few hours later, Xiao Chen was high-spirited and full of fighting spirit. However, when Xiao Chen quickly ran down the cliff, he found something extremely depressing. Damn, there was actually no taxi here. Chapter 6. Have you heard? The good-for-nothing young master of the Xiao family committed suicide by jumping off a cliff. The news spread very fast on campus. At this moment, people who knew Xiao Chen were talking about Xiao Chen's affairs in groups of 3 or 5. You heard it too. Student B said after listening, "Hey, if it were me, I would also commit suicide." He was driven out of the family, and the engagement was broken off by the Qing family. He was also exposed in the basketball game that he spent money to fix the game. Who can bear such a blow? Yes, Xiao Chen without the protection of his family is trash. No, he is worse than trash. Student C was the type of person who envied and hated the former Xiao Chen. So at this moment, when he heard that Xiao Chen was dead, he couldn't wait to curse more. Xiao Chen committed suicide? As soon as Kerlin entered the classroom, she heard the students talking about Xiao Chen. Listening carefully, it turned out to be the news of Xiao Chen's suicide. Kerlin was shocked at that time, and her pretty face suddenly became pale. Yes. One of Lin Kuer's admirers did not notice her expression, and instead said to Lin Kuer with a beaming smile, "Kuer, now that bastard Xiao Chen is dead, you won't be harassed by him anymore, and you've also regained your freedom, otherwise no one would have dared to pursue you in the past." This admirer's name was Du Xiaonan. He was the young master of a medium-sized family. Usually, he had a sense of superiority, but when he met Xiao Chen, he could only walk around, so he felt suffocated. In the past, when Xiao Chen was there, Kerlin simply became Xiao Chen's private property. Even if he couldn't pursue her, he couldn't allow others to touch her. Who said that? Kerlin looked at Du Xiaonan in disbelief. She did not expect that Xiao Chen would commit suicide. Didn't she just enlighten him a few hours ago? How could he? I heard it was said by a taxi driver who sent him to the cliff. Du Xiaonan had only heard about it from someone else, but he really hoped that Xiao Chen would die, so he told Kerlin about what he had heard, adding oil to the fire. After Xiao Chen lost the basketball match, he went to the snack bar to eat, but he found that he didn't bring any money. In the end, Qing Menjing had to pay for him. Xiao Chen's self-esteem probably suffered a great blow, so he hailed a taxi at the school gate and went to Songlong Mountain cliff mouth. In the end, the taxi driver watched as Xiao Chen jumped off the cliff. Du Xiaonan saw that Kerlin was trembling and her emotions were fluctuating. He thought that she was too happy because of Xiao Chen's death, so he didn't care. When Kerlin heard Du Xiaonan's words, her mind suddenly went blank. It was not that she didn't care, but she cared very much. In fact, she didn't hate Xiao Chen. On the contrary, she had always been secretly grateful to Xiao Chen for saving her. Although Xiao Chen had been pestering her afterward, he had never done anything excessive to embarrass her. This was his savior. Why couldn't he just let it go? Kerlin really couldn't figure it out. Even if he wasn't the young master of the Xiao family, couldn't he still get ahead through his own efforts? Kerlin, why aren't you talking? Aren't you too happy? After Du Xiaonan finished talking about Xiao Chen, he thought that Kerlin would be happy to chat with him for a while. However, he didn't expect that Kerlin returned to her own seat in a daze. She leaned on the table and didn't know what she was doing. Kerlin was crying. She really couldn't accept this fact. It wasn't that she liked Xiao Chen. It was just that she thought that Xiao Chen was a good person. I say, Du Xiaonan, is what you said true? Before Du Xiaonan could figure out what happened to Kerlin, another curious classmate came over and asked. Of course, it's true. The taxi driver is soliciting customers at the gate of our school. He is here every day. If you don't believe me, you can ask him. Du Xiaonan said confidently as if he had seen it with his own eyes. Naturally, Qing Menjing had also heard the news. However, her first reaction was not to follow the crowd's opinion like the others. Instead, she began to doubt the source of the news. Even if Xiao Chen had committed suicide, who had sent the news back? Moreover, a taxi driver, even if he sent Xiao Chen to the Songlong mountain cliff mouth, would he still wait for Xiao Chen to walk up the cliff step by step and then leave? It wasn't a tourist attraction. There were no customers at all. Cheng Menjing didn't believe that the taxi driver was so idle. Of course, whether all this was true or false, it had little to do with Cheng Menjing. Cheng Menjing didn't like Xiao Chen. This was a playboy who didn't have much ability, but relied on the power of his family to do whatever he wanted outside. Xiao Chen didn't put his fiancée in his eyes at all. He pursued her sister in front of her, and recently launched an attack on the commoner campus belle. Even if Cheng Menjing didn't like Xiao Chen, she wouldn't feel comfortable seeing this. Menjing, are you thinking about Xiao Chen? The one who spoke was Cheng Menjing's best friend, Shen Jingxian. She was also one of the beautiful girls that Xiao Chen once harassed. Shen Jingxian didn't belong to the 4 big families or the 5 small families. Instead, she came from a mysterious family. She was also the target of many young masters in Songning City. However, Shen Jingxian was different from Cheng Menjing's cold personality. She was very kind to everyone, always making people feel like they were bathing in the spring breeze. What do you want him to do? Cheng Menjing naturally wouldn't admit it. Jingxian, you, on the other hand, have one less pursuer. It will be less troublesome in the future. I hope the rumors are false. Xiao Chen is already unlucky enough. Shen Jingxian didn't care about the pursuer. Instead, she really seemed to care about Xiao Chen. However, she was very kind to everyone. This was her personality, not because she had any special thoughts about Xiao Chen. Cheng Menjing knew Shen Jingshuan's personality. She shrugged. To be honest, she didn't want Xiao Chen to die like this. Although Cheng Menjing had always rejected the marriage between her and Xiao Chen, as Shen Jingxian said, Xiao Chen was already unlucky enough. If it weren't for her grandfather, Xiao Chen wouldn't be so down and out. Therefore, Cheng Menjing always felt that she owed Xiao Chen. But thinking about it, when did he put her, his fiancée, in his eyes? Shaking her head, Cheng Menjing flipped through the book and didn't think about these things for the time being. When Xiao Chen ran back to school, it was already time for school to end. It was more than 20 kilometers. Xiao Chen ran back in one breath. Fortunately, although he didn't cultivate internal energy, his body was extremely strong every night. Otherwise, he would really run to death. Of course, he could still hail a taxi if he was halfway there. However, he had used up more than half of the 90 yuan he had paid for the taxi. Xiao Chen didn't want to spend the rest of the money so easily. He was in urgent need of money right now. Walking into the school, what Xiao Chen didn't expect was that he actually met Qin Jinpeng. Chapter 7. However, Xiao Chen didn't have the intention to greet him. Now, Xiao Chen wanted to return to the dormitory as soon as possible, and then practice according to the mantra imprinted in his mind by the elder heaven ancestor. Strength, this was what Xiao Chen longed for all the time since he was a child. Now that it was right in front of him, how could he not be anxious? However, Xiao Chen didn't want to talk to Qin Jinpeng. However, when Qin Jinpeng saw Xiao Chen, his eyes widened in horror, as if he had seen a ghost. He pointed at Xiao Chen and said, You. Aren't you dead? Xiao Chen was shocked in his heart, but on the surface, he looked at Qin Jinpeng calmly and said angrily, Qin Jinpeng, is there something wrong with your brain? You are the one who is dead. The matter of Xiao Chen being pushed off the cliff, only Xiao Chen himself and the person who did it behind the scenes knew. Could this person be Qin Jinpeng? However, Qin Jinpeng's inner force didn't seem to have such a high level of strength, right? Could it be that Qin Jinpeng also hid his strength? Xiao Chen wasn't stupid. From his father's disappearance to him being kicked out of the Xiao family, then being broken off the engagement, being murdered, and being pushed off the cliff, it seemed that there was an invisible hand behind all of this. If so many things were coincidences, then it was too much of a coincidence. However, to figure out all of this and find out who wanted to harm him behind the scenes, Xiao Chen must have the strength. Before he had the strength, he must continue to maintain his previous image, arrogant and easily angered, but he couldn't go too far. Qin Jinpeng didn't care that Xiao Chen scolded him, but he was still extremely shocked in his heart. The rumor that Xiao Chen committed suicide by jumping off the cliff had spread in the school, so when Qin Jinpeng saw Xiao Chen appearing in front of him, he was really shocked. However, after confirming that Xiao Chen was a person and not a ghost, Qin Jinpeng sneered and said, "You are lucky that you didn't die." At this time, Chao Yuliang came over. When he saw Xiao Chen, his eyes flashed with a hint of surprise. "Xiao Chen, a taxi driver said that you went to Songlong Mountain cliff mouth to commit suicide. It seems that the rumor is false." "Brother Liang." Qin Jinpeng had now followed the new boss and switched to the underling of Xiao Chen's former opponent. "Xiao Chen just pretended to be pretentious in front of me and said that I was sick in the head. Brother Liang, why don't we beat him up?" "Forget it. There are many students in school now." Chao Yuliang waved his hand. Of course, it wasn't because there were many students after school, but because Chao Yuliang saw Qing Menjing, Miss Cheng, walking over. Menjing. Chao Yuliang now had a sense of superiority in his heart. Qing Menjing and Xiao Chen had broken off the engagement, so he could pursue Qing Menjing justifiably. Qing Menjing ignored Chao Yuliang. She saw Xiao Chen standing here, so she walked over. To be honest, Qing Menjing didn't know what kind of mentality she had. Did she care about Xiao Chen? In the past, when Xiao Chen pursued Ke Lin and Shen Jingxian in front of her, Qing Menjing wanted to strangle him. "I am your fiancé after all. Have you ever given me face?" However, Xiao Chen was down and out. When she heard that he committed suicide by jumping off the cliff, Qing Menjing was a little worried and angry. "Well, I don't care about him. After all, he used to be my fiancé. If something happens to him, I'm afraid I'm also responsible." Who asked the Qing family to break off the engagement? Qing Menjing gave the answer in her heart. But on the surface, she looked at Xiao Chen very coldly. "I thought you really committed suicide. It's good that you're not dead. Otherwise, others will think that it was the Qing family who forced you to die." After that, Qing Menjing didn't stay. She quickly turned around and left. Chao Yuliang thought that Qing Menjing despised Xiao Chen, so he quickly followed and tried to please her. "Yeah, Menjing, if Xiao Chen died, it would also affect your reputation. If you want to die, at least wait." He died in a hurry. However, Qing Menjing didn't even look at Chao Yuliang. She went straight to a limousine at the school gate. This was the car that was responsible for picking her up and dropping her off every day. "Xiao Chen, take this money. Spend it sparingly." It was Shen Jingxian who spoke. She gave an envelope to Xiao Chen, smiled at him, and turned to leave. Chao Yuliang's attention was on Qing Menjing. Naturally, he didn't pay attention to this. As for Qin Jinpeng, although he also liked Shen Jingxian in his heart, it was because she was the target of his elder brother's pursuit. As a son of a concubine, Qin Jinpeng could only endure it. Otherwise, he wouldn't have fallen to the point of being a subordinate of Xiao Chen and Chao Yuliang. Xiao Chen held the envelope that still had Shen Jingxian's warmth. He was slightly surprised, but he didn't think that Shen Jingxian liked him. Shen Jingxian could be said to be the common lover of these aristocrats. Because she was so kind to everyone and often participated in some public welfare and charity activities, it was not a big deal to give a sum of money to Xiao Chen. Moreover, Xiao Chen wouldn't believe that Qing Menjing didn't incite Qing Menjing in this matter. At that time, only Qing Menjing knew that he didn't have the money to pay for the noodles. Chao Yuliang definitely wouldn't let Shen Jingxian give him money. Heh. Xiao Chen put away the money. Although it wasn't a lot, it was enough for him to use for a while. At the very least, the problem of food and clothing was solved. It seemed that his ex-fiancée's heart was also quite kind, but her usual indifference covered her kindness. Especially when she was with Shen Jingxian, it couldn't highlight anything about Qing Menjing. But now that he thought about it, if it wasn't so, they wouldn't have become such good girlfriends. Although he got a sum of money, Xiao Chen wasn't very happy. He thought that the person who pushed him was Chen Jinpeng, but listening to Chao Yuliang, the whole school knew about this matter. Was it the taxi driver who said it? Who wants to harm me? In Xiao Chen's opinion, the taxi driver was most likely an excuse. Perhaps the source of the rumor came from the person who pushed him down the cliff. Or, this taxi driver was arranged by him. Otherwise, why would he take the initiative to appear in front of me and take me to Songlong Mountain cliff mouth? Of course, it could also be a coincidence, but the person who pushed me down the cliff must be the person who spread the rumor. However, it was too difficult to find the source of the rumor on campus. He could only take it step by step. First, he would improve his strength, and then slowly find the behind-the-scenes manipulator. Of course, what puzzled Xiao Chen the most was that he was already so down and out. From his usual performance, he was completely a prodigal son who had no ability to survive. Why did this person want to cut the weeds and eliminate the roots? What good would it do him if he killed me? Xiao Chen walked all the way back to his dormitory. Xiao Chen had turned a blind eye to the fingers of other people on the way. These people were probably here to see his resurrection. The speed of the rumor was really fast. Chapter 8. Dormitory. Xiao Chen had a separate dormitory in the school, but Xiao Chen had only stayed there a few times in the past 3 years. The furniture inside was covered with a thick layer of dust. Fortunately, there was a dormitory. Otherwise, Xiao Chen would probably have to sleep on the streets. The dormitory's fees were paid when he entered the school, so Xiao Chen didn't have to worry about it. Xiao Chen didn't care about the dust on the furniture. He directly sat on the bed with his legs crossed, ready to start practicing the mantra that Elder Heaven Ancestor had given him. After all, he had been longing for strength for too long. Now that there was a chance to turn things around, Xiao Chen definitely couldn't wait. After sitting down, Xiao Chen began to recall the mantra that Elder Heaven Ancestor had passed to him. Xiao Chen didn't know how Elder Heaven Ancestor had passed it to him, but when he recalled, a sheepskin scroll that recorded the mantra suddenly appeared in his mind. This sheepskin scroll was vivid in his mind, as if Xiao Chen had seen it himself. It should be the memory of Elder Heaven Ancestor, but he didn't know why it had been transmitted to Xiao Chen's mind. Decisive battle to turn fortune into heaven snatch. What kind of lousy name was this? It was so strange. However, Xiao Chen didn't care. Generally, very powerful mantra had very strange names. For example, he had read a biographical novel called School Bell's Personal Expert on his mobile phone. In it, there was a Master Lin who practiced the art of dragon mastery. Look, what a crappy name. However, that mental cultivation method was extremely powerful. Thinking about it, this decisive battle, turning fortune into heaven seizing, should also be very powerful. Since it could even be called a decisive battle, it should be quite powerful. The turning fortune into heaven seizing of the decisive battle should be an even more powerful existence, just like how a horse would break through the clouds and trample through the universe. Thinking up to here, Xiao Chen began to cultivate according to the mantra on the decisive battle against heaven seizing fate. Although this cultivation method was different from the body forging when cultivating inner strength, Xiao Chen was very familiar with the acupuncture points and meridians of the human body since he had been cultivating inner strength since young. Although Xiao Chen felt that this decisive battle to turn fortune into heaven snatch was a little strange, Xiao Chen had never been in contact with such things, so he braced himself and continued to practice. According to the information left in Xiao Chen's mind by the Elder Heaven Ancestor, if one wanted to become a cultivator, the first step was to sense the inner qi in his body. After forming the sense of qi, according to the order of the mantra, let this sense of qi, which was the so-called primordial qi, run back and forth in the meridians of the body. As long as it could be successfully run, it was equivalent to setting foot on the threshold of cultivation. Everything was difficult at the beginning, but for an obsessive-compulsive madman like Xiao Chen, it was nothing at all. How boring was it in the eyes of ordinary people to repeatedly run the mantra to produce the sense of qi in the body? But for Xiao Chen, who had been training his inner strength in the basement for more than 10 years, it was nothing at all. Over and over again, Xiao Chen ran the mantra tirelessly. Although there was no feeling in his body, Xiao Chen felt that the elder heaven ancestor would not deceive him, so he still forced himself to run the mantra over and over again. 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock. Although Xiao Chen could run the mantra tirelessly over and over again, at this moment, he more or less doubted whether this decisive battle to turn fortune into heaven's snatch was suitable for him to practice. There was no reaction for so long. Was it because his aptitude was too poor, or was there a problem with his cultivation method? If he wanted to cultivate, did he have to go to a place with abundant qi of heaven and earth? However, just as Xiao Chen was wondering, suddenly, Xiao Chen felt a slight chill in his chest. Then, he clearly felt that there was a small stream of qi that began to spread from his chest to his whole body along the meridians in his body. As Xiao Chen ran the mantra, the stream of qi became bigger and bigger. At this moment, Xiao Chen wanted to exclaim in surprise. He had actually successfully cultivated the sense of qi. Didn't this mean that he was about to become a cultivator? Thinking of this, Xiao Chen gritted his teeth and continued to quickly run the mantra, making the stream of qi in his body more and more. It began to circulate around the meridians in his body. As the vitality in Xiao Chen's body increased, the vitality began to flow through the meridians in his body. This caused Xiao Chen to cry out in pain. This was the first time that vitality was flowing through the meridians. This kind of feeling was heart-wrenching, but Xiao Chen did not stop. Ever since he was young, he only believed in one sentence. That was, only by enduring the most bitter hardships can one rise above others. If it wasn't for the bone-chilling cold, how could there be the fragrance of plum blossoms? This was also the reason why Xiao Chen had been training in the basement for more than 10 years. However, sometimes, no matter how hard he worked, the materials were not right. An iron rod could be ground into a needle, but a wooden rod could not. Xiao Chen's physique was not good enough. No matter how much he trained, he could not cultivate inner strength. Therefore, when the vitality was produced, Xiao Chen would be so excited. Even if it was extremely painful, he would grit his teeth and persist in this hard-won success. Finally, under Xiao Chen's forceful cultivation, every meridian in his body was filled with vitality. This vitality began to circulate continuously in Xiao Chen's meridians, one round after another. It was unknown when it started, but Xiao Chen discovered that the pain of the meridians tearing no longer existed. Instead, it was replaced by a warm and comfortable feeling. While this vitality was circulating in the meridians, it also seemed to be nourishing them. After an unknown period of time, the sky turned white. Xiao Chen felt that the vitality circulating in his body suddenly stopped, and then it quickly surged towards his dantian. In an instant, all the vitality continuously surged into Xiao Chen's dantian. Xiao Chen only felt that his dantian was about to explode. This vitality was constantly being compressed in his dantian, and Xiao Chen's face also turned red. There wouldn't be a problem, right? Xiao Chen clenched his teeth, but he didn't know what to do. He wanted to stop the circulation of the mantra, but he didn't dare to casually stop. It wasn't easy to cultivate the sense of qi, and it had even formed a cycle. If he were to give up just like that, Xiao Chen wouldn't be willing. This was the strength that he had been yearning for day and night for more than a decade. Boom! Xiao Chen only felt his body suddenly shake, and it was as if something in his body had broken through. Although there was a kind of pain from the vibration, there was also a kind of pleasure that had been suppressed for a long time and was suddenly released. In this situation, Xiao Chen had no choice but to stop the circulation of the mantra. He had already cultivated until it exploded. If he didn't stop, who knew what else would happen in a while? Strength was important, but he also needed to be alive to have it. After stopping the circulation of the mantra, Xiao Chen quickly checked his body to see if there were any problems with his body. However, before Xiao Chen started checking, there was a sudden sound in his ear, and it shocked Xiao Chen. Chapter 9. Xiao Chen, not bad. You've broken through to the first level of qi refinement so quickly? I thought you'd need a few days. The sudden voice in the quiet morning scared Xiao Chen so much that he almost exploded. It was the voice of the elder heaven ancestor. When Xiao Chen heard it clearly, he breathed a sigh of relief. I say, elder heaven ancestor, can you not be so surprised? Don't you know that you can scare people to death when you speak so suddenly? Also, don't call me Xiao Chen, it sounds like a eunuch. Then next time, I'll remind you that I'm going to speak. The elder heaven ancestor asked jokingly. Xiao Chen, what's the difference? Xiao Chen was speechless. You're reminding me, but you're still talking to me? But then again, the elder heaven ancestor could only communicate with me through words. What else could I do? As for how the elder heaven ancestor addressed me, no one else could hear it, so I'll just let it be. I didn't expect your vital energy to be so pure. You've just broken through to the first level of qi refinement, and you're already able to wake me up. The elder heaven ancestor was a little surprised. But then he suddenly exclaimed, that's not right. Kid, are you practicing the mantra I gave you? Your yuan qi is a little different from my yuan qi in the past. Of course, it's different. How did you wake up? Xiao Chen was a little surprised. I can use it. I'm also curious why I can use it, but I'm sure it's not. The elder heaven ancestor said with certainty, the vital energy in your body is definitely different from mine. Are you sure you're practicing the mantra I gave you? Isn't that obvious? Xiao Chen rolled his eyes. If I had other mantras, would have practiced them long ago. Why would I be pushed off a cliff? What I'm cultivating is definitely the decisive battle fortune seizing heaven technique that you gave me. What? The elder heaven ancestor said, visibly taken aback. What do you mean by good fortune seized by the heavens? What's that? The mantra that you transmitted to my mind. Xiao Chen said. Pfft. The elder heaven ancestor almost burst out laughing. What decisive battle? That's called the heavens fortune battle art. It's a mantra, not a decisive battle. Xiao Chen, are you blind? Heaven stealing fortune battle art? Xiao Chen was stunned. He carefully looked at it in his mind. That Jew was probably Jew. It was just that these two words were too similar. They were only one stroke apart. Xiao Chen's first impression was the strongest, and he saw it as decisive battle, so he had always treated it as Jew. In other words, this word was read backwards. Xiao Chen, don't you know that these mantras are from ancient texts? You have to read them from right to left. The elder heaven ancestor said helplessly. How could there be such a strange name? Decisive battle fortune seizing heaven technique. This. Old Sky, may I ask if every line of the mental cultivation method mnemonic chant is read from right to left as well? Xiao Chen's heart trembled as he hurriedly asked. Yes. When the elder heaven ancestor said this, his tone suddenly changed. I say, don't tell me you cultivated from left to right? Yes. Xiao Chen felt like crying. Damn, what was going on? No one had ever told him that this mantra had to be read from right to left. This sentence took up one line, and each mantra didn't exceed one line. That was why when Xiao Chen read it, he didn't notice anything wrong and continued to cultivate. However, the elder heaven ancestor told him that he cultivated it backwards. Then how did you cultivate it? The elder heaven ancestor was in disbelief. Wasn't this too much of a genius? If I didn't cultivate it, how did you wake up? Xiao Chen was a little anxious. I say, elder heaven ancestor, aren't you too much of a scammer? Couldn't you have said it first before fainting? Now that I cultivated it backwards, there's no harm, right? How would I know? The elder heaven ancestor's voice was a little strange. Who would have thought that you could cultivate it backwards? This is the first time I've heard of this. Besides, don't you understand the general knowledge of ancient texts? Then what should I do now? Should I cultivate it backwards? Xiao Chen asked with a bitter smile. That's absolutely not possible. The elder heaven ancestor immediately said. Every cultivator can only cultivate one mantra, and they must stick to one until the end. If they change their mantra midway, then at best, they won't be able to cultivate both mantras. At worst, they will go mad and become a cripple. So, if you can cultivate it backwards, then continue to cultivate it. I don't know how far you can go. So you're saying that I won't be able to become a top expert in the future? After hearing this, Xiao Chen's heart tightened. He was a little unwilling. A good opportunity was right in front of him, but he wasted it. This was really F***ed up. That's hard to say. But, since you can cultivate it backwards, I remember something. The elder heaven ancestor said. What is it? Xiao Chen asked. A long, long time ago, when I was young and had just entered the sect, my master said something very strange when he passed the heaven's stolen fortune battle art to me. Elder Sky seemed to be reminiscing as he said with some emotion, he told me that the heaven's stolen fortune battle art can be cultivated in reverse, but he said to me that the heaven's stolen fortune battle art can be cultivated in reverse. Xiao Chen's heart moved, but he immediately shook his head. This was too ridiculous. Elder Heaven Ancestor, are you comforting me? It's not really comforting. Maybe, cultivating like this is the right thing to do? The Elder Heaven Ancestor was a little confused. But, no matter what, you are now a true first-level refinement expert. First-level refinement? What level is that? Xiao Chen asked. Generally speaking, the strength of a level 1 refinement stage expert is equivalent to a level 1 inner force expert. Elder Sky said. What? Xiao Chen was shocked. Elder Heaven Ancestor, you mean to say that after one night of cultivation, I am equivalent to first-level internal force expert? Not equal, but approximately equal. The Elder Heaven Ancestor said. In other words, you are still a little bit weaker than first-level internal force expert? Xiao Chen said. After all, in one night, he had caught up with the other person's cultivation for so long. I say, Xiao Chen, when will you change your mind? I've already told you that we are cultivators, so we are stronger than martial artists. Right now, your strength is similar to that of a stage 1 inner force martial artist, but you have the ability to cast spells that martial artists don't have. Spells? Xiao Chen laughed dryly. It wasn't a matter of changing his mindset. It was just that it was too easy to reach the first stage of the Qi refinement stage. Xiao Chen subconsciously felt that he wasn't as powerful as a martial artist at the first stage of inner force. Chapter 10. That's right. For example, transmogrification, invisibility, tracking, lock-on, healing, maturing plants, alchemy, forging, and so on. Elder Sky said, I will transmit the corresponding spells and usage methods of each level to you. Just as Elder Sky finished speaking, a thought flashed through Xiao Chen's mind. Another sheepskin scroll appeared. Recorded on it were the spells and methods that cultivators of each level could use. Xiao Chen took a look at the spells that could be used in the first level of the refinement stage. Damn, there was nothing. Elder Heaven Ancestor, why is there nothing in the first level of refinement stage? Xiao Chen asked in a depressed tone. The first level of a martial artist's inner force is only for strengthening the body and allowing the user to exert the body's maximum strength. It's not that amazing, is it? Elder Heaven Ancestor asked. Xiao Chen was slightly surprised but immediately nodded his head. Indeed, a martial artist's inner force was divided into the first level, second level, all the way to the 10th level. The first level of inner force was only for strengthening the body and allowing the user to exert the body's maximum strength. In other words, the user could exert the full potential of a normal person. The second level of inner force was twice the limit of the user's maximum strength. The third level of inner force was 3 times the limit of the user's maximum strength, and so on. Therefore, even if the martial artists were at the same level, there was still a gap between them. However, this gap was not particularly big. Martial artists who could cultivate inner force were generally not weak, so the maximum strength they could exert was about the same. Of course, this did not exclude those martial artists who were born with divine strength. These martial artists, once they cultivated to a certain level, would become the king of the martial artist world. Because inner force was a common martial artist's martial art, the mantra was basically the same. Even if there were some differences, it was still more or less the same. Therefore, it was relatively easy to distinguish between martial artists. Even if a martial artist had not cultivated inner force, when a martial artist used inner force, it was still possible to determine the martial artist's level of strength. Of course, that was unless it was an ordinary person who did not understand martial artists. However, Xiao Chen, who was at the first level of the qi refining stage, was different. This was a very vague concept. Xiao Chen himself could not feel how strong he was. If it was not for Elder Sky's words, he would have thought that the first level of the qi refining stage was useless. Thinking of this, Xiao Chen stood up excitedly and punched the dormitory wall. Boom dash, with a loud bang, the walls of the dormitory began to crumble. Although the thick concrete walls were not damaged, the limit of a normal person's strength was only this much. If one wanted to break the concrete with one punch, that would be impossible unless one was born with godly strength. Hiss, Xiao Chen sucked in a breath of cold air. Even he didn't expect that he would cause such a huge commotion. This loud noise was abnormally loud in the quiet dormitory area in the early morning. He did not know if others would think that it was an earthquake. However, Xiao Chen could clearly feel that this was the strength of a martial artist who had reached the first level of inner force. He could increase his strength to the limit. This was something that Xiao Chen had not been able to do for the past 10 years despite his efforts. Elder Heaven Ancestor, this decisive battle fortune seizing technique is simply too awesome. Xiao Chen said excitedly. It is the battle fortune seizing technique. Elder Heaven Ancestor said nervously. Isn't it the decisive battle fortune seizing technique that I am practicing? Xiao Chen said. Well, yes. Elder Heaven Ancestor also could not figure out what kind of mantra Xiao Chen was practicing. Xiao Chen felt as if his body had been reborn. For more than 10 years, he had never felt so comfortable as this morning. There were still a few hours before class. Xiao Chen sat on his bed, calmed down, and began to think about what happened yesterday. Father was missing. Although before this news was confirmed, his father had disappeared for more than half a year, and many people said that the team led by his father had all fallen, Xiao Chen still did not believe that his father had fallen. In Xiao Chen's heart, his father was his role model, and also the goal that he had been working hard to achieve. Although Xiao Feng's qualifications were not as good as Qing Menjing's uncle, the genius of the younger generation of the Qing family, Xiao Feng and Xiao Chen were very hardworking, which also made him one of the top masters of the younger generation. The trial team that was weaker than his father had successfully returned, but his father did not return. Xiao Chen felt a little strange, but with his father's strength, there should not have been any accidents. Or, the fall of his father's trial team was the same as Xiao Chen's suicide yesterday. It was fake news released by someone with ulterior motives. However, what happened yesterday was a wake-up call for Xiao Chen. Someone wanted him dead. I don't know if this person has anything to do with his father's disappearance. Xiao Chen knew that all the mysteries could only be confirmed after he caught this person. However, Xiao Chen was now in the light, and the enemy was in the dark. In this school, there were too many people who didn't like Xiao Chen. It was a little difficult for Xiao Chen to find this person. If it wasn't for the fact that Xiao Chen had cultivated a calm and inexpressive personality since he was young, these blows from yesterday would have been enough to make him collapse. If it was replaced by that good-for-nothing hedonistic idiot on the surface, he might really have committed suicide. This was also the reason why after the news of Xiao Chen's suicide spread in the school, no one suspected Xiao Chen's suicide. Instead, they felt strange that Xiao Chen did not die. It had to be said that the mastermind behind this was really sinister. He killed me and framed me as a suicide. Seeing that it was almost time, Xiao Chen washed his face, left the dormitory, and walked in the direction of the classroom. Along the way, people kept pointing at Xiao Chen. Perhaps they were gloating because Xiao Chen was kicked out of the Xiao family, or perhaps they were gloating because Xiao Chen committed suicide yesterday and appeared again today. However, Xiao Chen didn't care. He just frowned in his heart. In this environment, it was really a little difficult to find the person who harmed me. At least, in Xiao Chen's opinion, everyone could be the murderer who harmed me, and everyone didn't look very similar. Hey, isn't this Xiao Chen? Where are you going in such a hurry? A teasing voice came into Xiao Chen's ears. This was the voice of Chao Yuliang. Xiao Chen stopped, raised his head, and looked coldly at Chao Yuliang. With Xiao Chen's current strength, it was easy to teach Chao Yuliang a lesson. Although the Chao family was powerful, Chao Yuliang was just like him in the past, a rich playboy who couldn't cultivate inner force. However, what Xiao Chen was afraid of was Chao Yuliang's side, Qin Jinpeng. Qin Jinpeng was a stage 2 inner force martial artist, and Xiao Chen didn't want to reveal his strength too early. Who knew if the people who harmed me were these two, or if they were watching nearby? If they knew that I had successfully mastered the strength of stage 1 inner force, maybe they would want to kill me even more. Thinking quickly, Xiao Chen couldn't think of a good way. Chapter 11. Xiao Chen, why are you so flustered? Not long after Chao Yuliang's teasing voice fell, Elder Heaven Ancestor's teasing voice sounded in Xiao Chen's ear again. F***CK. Elder Heaven Ancestor, can you stop causing trouble? I'm already in a difficult situation. Xiao Chen responded helplessly in his mind. Huh, Xiao Chen knows how to look at me coldly? Your eyes are so sharp. I'm so scared. Chao Yuliang saw Xiao Chen's cold eyes. Not only was he not afraid, but he laughed even more unscrupulously. Yesterday, Chao Yuliang was a little annoyed that Xiao Chen didn't die. Motherf ***, he booked a banquet at the largest hotel in Songning City, Azure Sea Palace. After school in the evening, he prepared to celebrate the death of his longtime rival, Xiao Chen, with his new underling, Qin Jinpeng, and a group of former underlings. But he didn't expect to see a lively Xiao Chen come back when he just walked to the school gate. How could he not be annoyed? Originally, he wanted to teach Xiao Chen a lesson yesterday, but who would have thought that Qing Menjing would appear? In front of Qing Menjing, Chao Yuliang couldn't go too far. Although Chao Yuliang knew that Qing Menjing didn't like Xiao Chen at all, beating up her ex-fiancé in front of her was a little like slapping her in the face. So, Chao Yuliang endured it. However, after he heard the underlings report this morning, he couldn't bear it anymore. Last night, when he was chasing after Qing Menjing, Shen Jingxian had secretly slipped a bag of money to Xiao Chen. Although he knew Shen Jingshuan's character and that she would even give some money to a poor beggar, if Qing Menjing hadn't told Shen Jingxian that Xiao Chen had no money, how could Shen Jingxian have given money to Xiao Chen? Why was Goddess Cheng so concerned about Xiao Chen? Was it just because Xiao Chen was her ex-fiancé? Therefore, Chao Yuliang was so angry that he brought Qin Jinpeng and a few of his underlings to stop Xiao Chen early in the morning. He wanted to teach him a lesson and warn him to stay away from Qing Menjing. Hee, do you need any help? The Elder Heaven Ancestor's voice rang out again. Help? You can help? Xiao Chen frowned slightly. Even if the Elder Heaven Ancestor used his body to attack, wouldn't he have exposed his true strength? This wasn't what Xiao Chen wanted to see. Of course, if I don't show you my strength, how can you admire me as your master? It seems that you don't respect me very much. The Elder Heaven Ancestor said arrogantly. Xiao Chen was about to say something to the Elder Heaven Ancestor when Qin Jinpeng, who was not far behind Chao Yuliang, pretended to notice the situation and said, "Oh, isn't this boss? Boss, what trouble are you in?" "I'm here." "Boss, just tell me what to do." Qin Jinpeng did this on purpose to humiliate Xiao Chen. He wanted to make Xiao Chen feel the difference between heaven and earth. The more he hit Xiao Chen, the more he would feel inferior. Xiao Chen, if I were you, I would be ashamed. Don't tell me that you need a little brother to protect you. Oh, right, you also have an ex-fiancé. Chao Yuliang also played along with Qin Jinpeng's act. If I were you, I would be ashamed. Even if I didn't commit suicide, would transfer to another school. How could you still have the face to stay here? Let me give you a piece of advice. Stay away from Qing Menjing in the future. Transfer to another school? Xiao Chen's heart moved slightly. Yes, I can transfer to another school. Here, I stand in the light, and the person who wants to deal with me is in the dark. It can be said that it is extremely difficult to find him. But if I transfer to another school, this person will have to go to the new school to find me if he wants to harm me again. In this way, this familiar face will also be exposed in the light. What Xiao Chen didn't expect was that Qiao Yuliang's inadvertent words reminded him. But Xiao Chen immediately smiled bitterly. Now, he had lost the halo of the young master of the Xiao family. He didn't have money or background. How could he transfer to another school? If he didn't pay the transfer fee to the new school, would they let him go as he pleased? Well, Qin Jinpeng, Qiao Yuliang dared to insult me. You beat him up for me. Beat him up until his mother can't recognize him. Xiao Chen suddenly shouted. However, the tragedy in Xiao Chen's heart was that it wasn't him who shouted. It was the bastard elder heaven ancestor who took over his body and shouted. Therefore, this sentence of Xiao Chen shocked Qiao Yuliang and his underlings. No matter how stupid this Xiao Chen was, he wouldn't be stupid to this extent, right? Qin Jinpeng clearly wanted to humiliate him, and he really believed it. However, what made Qiao Yuliang even more shocked was that Qin Jinpeng actually replied loudly, "Yes. Boss, don't worry. Qiao Yuliang dared to humiliate you. I will let him know that those who humiliate others will be humiliated in return." Qiao Yuliang was slightly stunned. He looked at Qin Jinpeng with some surprise. He thought that there was no need for Qin Jinpeng to continue acting, right? However, the next moment, he saw a fist enlarging in front of his eyes, continuously enlarging. Bang! Qiao Yuliang's face was punched by Qin Jinpeng. Qiao Yuliang suddenly let out an scream. Blood flowed from his nose as he took 2 steps back. He looked at Qin Jinpeng in horror. Qin Jinpeng, you, bang. The answer to Qiao Yuliang was a kick to the nether. Qin Jinpeng directly kicked Qiao Yuliang's little brother. Qiao Yuliang suddenly covered his crotch and jumped up on the spot. He was in so much pain that he was sweating profusely. Qin Jinpeng was a master of stage 2 inner force. This hit on Qiao Yuliang's body was equivalent to taking his life. Motherf asterisk Qin Jinpeng, you're crazy. Qiao Yuliang shouted. However, the answer to Qiao Yuliang was Qin Jinpeng's slap. Pa! Qiao Yuliang was slapped in the face. At this moment, Qiao Yuliang's underlings looked at Qin Jinpeng in shock. They suspected that this Qin Jinpeng was playing infernal affairs. Previously, he pretended to surrender, but in fact, he wanted to humiliate Qiao Yuliang at the right time. But this was not logical. Xiao Chen had already lost his power. How could a destitute young master be compared to Qiao Yuliang at all? Qiao Yuliang and his underlings were stunned. Go, go. Pull this madman away. Qiao Yuliang shouted at his underlings in exasperation. These underlings hesitated for a moment. They were Qiao Yuliang's underlings, but they were not bodyguards. They were just students of the school. The strongest among them was only a stage 1 inner force martial artist, and Qin Jinpeng was a stage 2 inner force martial artist. This was not a secret in Qiao Yuliang's circle. This was also the reason why they did not dare to make a move before. But now, Qiao Yuliang had given the order. These underlings had no choice but to bite the bullet. Otherwise, the consequences would be even more miserable. Therefore, in front of Xiao Chen, there was a big fight. Qin Jinpeng was desperately beating Qiao Yuliang, and Qiao Yuliang's underlings were desperately beating Qin Jinpeng. Fortunately, Qin Jinpeng seemed to be possessed. He only attacked Qiao Yuliang, but he was indifferent to those underlings who were beating him. Chapter 12. To be honest, Qiao Yuliang and his underlings were not the only ones who were shocked. Xiao Chen himself was also shocked. He was also very curious as to why Qin Jinpeng suddenly attacked Qiao Yuliang like a madman, putting on a wonderful dog-eat-dog show. That's right, it's the Elder Heaven Ancestor. Xiao Chen suddenly remembered what the Elder Heaven Ancestor said before. Elder Heaven Ancestor must be behind this. But how did the Elder Heaven Ancestor do it? Elder Heaven Ancestor, you did it, didn't you? At this moment, Xiao Chen had already regained control of his body. It was only for a moment that the Elder Heaven Ancestor took over his body. Hee, Xiao Chen, it seems that you are not stupid. That's right, I did it. Elder Heaven Ancestor said proudly. You? How did you do it? Xiao Chen was very shocked. He didn't care about the arrogant tone of the Elder Heaven Ancestor. Cultivators have strong mental strength. It is still possible to influence other people's thoughts. Elder Heaven Ancestor said. Influence other people's thoughts? Xiao Chen suddenly understood. He couldn't help but be very excited. So that's how it is. Cultivators are actually so powerful? At first, Xiao Chen thought that cultivators were just a roundabout route. They used special methods to achieve the power of a martial artist. But now, it seemed that was not the case at all. Nonsense. Cultivators are a very high-end and powerful profession. How is it? Your master is considered powerful, right? Now do you admit defeat? Elder Heaven Ancestor asked. Very powerful. But when can I influence other people's thoughts? Xiao Chen asked with some expectation. You are only at the first level of the refinement stage. Don't bite off more than you can chew. Elder Heaven Ancestor reminded. Xiao Chen was a little unwilling. When he was about to ask again, a wheezing voice came over. Boss, I heard that the traitor Qin Jinpeng and Chao Yuliang are together to cause trouble. I'm not late, am I? I'm here. As soon as Xiao Chen turned his head, he saw a ball covered in bandages running towards him at an incomparably fast speed. This speed did not match his size, but his speed was just that fast. Xiao Chen's heart slightly moved. This person was another one of his underlings. His name was Zhu Yingxiong. Yesterday, when Xiao Chen was down and out, Zhu Yingxiong didn't come to school. So, Xiao Chen subconsciously thought that Zhu Yingxiong was also ungrateful and betrayed him. He didn't expect that Zhu Yingxiong would run over so early in the morning. What made Xiao Chen the most strange was that Zhu Yingxiong was actually covered in bandages. He was simply like a mummy. Zhu Yingxiong? If it wasn't for his size and voice, Xiao Chen almost couldn't recognize him. Boss, am I late? Huh? When Zhu Yingxiong ran over, he was stunned to see the scene in front of him. Qin Jinpeng, Chao Yuliang, and Chao Yuliang's underlings were actually fighting together. This was simply a big fight. Wow, boss, are they crazy? Who knows? Chao Yuliang came looking for trouble before. Qin Jinpeng said that he would help me teach Chao Yuliang a lesson, so I agreed. You saw the result. Xiao Chen shrugged and said innocently. Indeed, he was very innocent. It had nothing to do with him. It was obviously Elder Heaven Ancestor who did it. Could it be that the traitor is playing infernal affairs? No, this isn't his personality. Is he really crazy? Zhu Yingxiong looked at Qin Jinpeng, who was in the middle of the battle royale, and muttered to himself. Who knows? Let's go. Don't worry about them. Xiao Chen said to Zhu Yingxiong. Then he waved his hand at Qin Jinpeng and said, Jinpeng, you did a good job. Qin Jinpeng was still waving his fists and punching Chao Yuliang. While Chao Yuliang was protecting the vital parts of his body, a trace of viciousness flashed in his eyes. Xiao Chen, don't be too proud. Boss, did you really get kicked out of the Xiao family? After the two left and entered the classroom, Zhu Yingxiong asked. That's right. Xiao Chen sighed slightly. His eyes fell on Zhu Yingxiong's face. However, from his eyes, Xiao Chen saw concern and worry. There was no mockery or schadenfreude. It seemed that Zhu Yingxiong wasn't a two-faced villain. Yesterday, he didn't show up. Xiao Chen had wronged him. His injuries were probably related to him not coming to school yesterday. Ah. It's true. Wow, then breaking off the engagement is also true? Zhu Yingxiong exclaimed. That's true. Xiao Chen nodded. Forget it. There are plenty of fish in the sea. Boss, you still have me. Zhu Yingxiong comforted him. However, Xiao Chen felt a chill run down his spine. And you? By the way, what's with your body full of injuries? I'm no longer the Xiao Chen from before. Do you still call me boss? Xiao Chen asked. Wow, once a boss, always a boss. I'm not Chen Jinpeng, the traitor. As for this injury, I fell. Zhu Yingxiong was obviously unwilling to mention his injuries. Old pig, thank you. Xiao Chen was a little touched. However, Xiao Chen looked at Zhu Yingxiong up and down and asked, Did you jump off the cliff? You have injuries all over your body? Who are you lying to? Ugh. Zhu Yingxiong's expression was stagnant. He smiled bitterly and said, Wow, you are indeed a boss. You saw through the flaws at a glance. Well, to be honest, yesterday I heard that you were chased out of the family and the Qing family broke off the engagement. I was going to come to school to support you, but my dad didn't agree. He asked me to stay away from you, so I quarreled with him. In the end, he beat me up like this. Although Zhu Yingxiong's words were simple, Xiao Chen knew that the situation at that time was probably quite intense. What kind of quarrel was it to beat him up like this? In Xiao Chen's heart, there was only deep emotion. Disregarding the traitor Chen Jinpeng, Zhu Yingxiong was a brother. That was enough. In fact, the one Zhu Yingxiong never left was the prodigal Xiao Chen. Then why did you come out now? Xiao Chen was a little puzzled. He was already beaten up like this. Why did the Zhu family allow Zhu Yingxiong to come out today? It's because the old ancestor of my family asked my dad not to interfere in my affairs. If there is a problem, the old ancestor will bear it. So, my dad didn't even dare to fart. Zhu Yingxiong said proudly. Xiao Chen nodded. Xiao Chen knew about the old ancestor of the Zhu family. Only this old ancestor could say such domineering words. The children of other families all kept a respectful distance from Xiao Chen, for fear of angering the Qing family. Moreover, it was reasonable that Zhu Yingxiong's father didn't allow him to have any contact with Xiao Chen. After all, a big family would consider the gains and losses of the family as a whole, rather than personal preferences. Naturally, the Zhu family didn't want to offend the Qing family because of such a small matter. However, since the old ancestor of the Zhu family had spoken, the Zhu family naturally didn't dare to say anything. Because the old ancestor of the Qing family didn't dare to act rashly. Chapter 13. The Zhu family that Zhu Yingxiong belonged to used to be ranked at the bottom of the 4 big and 5 small aristocratic families. It was said that they were about to be kicked out of the aristocratic families in the previous year's aristocratic family meeting. As the heir of such a family, Zhu Yingxiong naturally didn't have a good life. Thus, he became one of the targets of Chao Yuliang's bullying. Xiao Chen had only helped him when Chao Yuliang was bullying him. Since then, Zhu Yingxiong had become Xiao Chen's follower. To Xiao Chen, this was nothing. However, to Zhu Yingxiong, it was like a drop of water being repaid with a gushing spring. Because of Xiao Chen, he had been able to live with more dignity from then on. Not long after this incident, the Zhu family held a family meeting on the eve of the aristocratic family's meeting. The Zhu family was prepared to give up on participating in the meeting. After all, it was already certain that they would be kicked out of the aristocratic families. If they went, they would only be slapped in the face. It would be even more embarrassing. What was the point of looking for abuse? However, at this time, an old ancestor of the Zhu family returned. Actually, to be honest, this old ancestor was only the Zhu family's granduncle. He didn't have any direct descendants. Even so, he could be considered as the ancestor of the Zhu family. Xiao Chen didn't know how powerful the Zhu family's old ancestor was. However, he knew that after the Zhu family's old ancestor came back, he only paid a visit to the Qing family. In the following aristocratic family meeting, the Qing family's old master actually supported the Zhu family from the bottom of the 5 small aristocratic families to the top of the 5 small aristocratic families. Although the Qing family was the top of the 9 aristocratic families, Old Master Cheng's suggestion to let the Zhu family be the top of the 5 small aristocratic families for no reason was a bit unacceptable. However, the appearance of the old ancestor made everyone shut up. Moreover, everyone agreed that it was a waste of the Zhu family's talent to be the top of the 5 small aristocratic families. However, the old ancestor didn't have any intention of fighting for power. He only wanted to maintain the status of the Zhu family. However, such a powerful person had actually taken a fancy to Zhu Yingxiong and decided to make him his successor. As a result, a member of the Zhu family, an aspiring martial artist family, also embarked on the path of cultivation. However, Zhu Yingxiong had started his cultivation relatively late and had yet to reach the first stage of inner force. He had only touched the edge of the barrier, which was also the reason why his father was able to beat him up so badly. Xiao Chen patted Zhu Yingxiong's shoulder. Although he didn't say anything, everything was expressed without words. Xiao Chen saw Zhu Yingxiong's sincerity. However, the situation he was facing now wasn't something that Zhu Yingxiong could help him. The old ancestor of the Zhu family wouldn't help him just because of his relationship with Zhu Yingxiong. Not to mention Zhu Yingxiong, the old ancestor didn't care much about the Zhu family's matters. "Oh right, boss, are you really okay? I heard that you committed suicide yesterday. I was in the hospital and really couldn't move. This morning, when I finally felt better, my lackeys called me and said that Chao Yuliang and Chen Jinpeng were looking for trouble with you. While I was happy that you didn't commit suicide, I also rushed over, afraid that these two would find trouble with you. However, I didn't expect them to fight among themselves. It's okay. What could it be?" Xiao Chen's tone had a hint of helplessness. "I don't know why they fought. But Chen Jinpeng definitely didn't find his conscience. I don't think it's possible. I didn't like this kid before. If he didn't follow you before me, *CK, I would have already killed him," Zhu Yingxiong said. Xiao Chen nodded and didn't say anything. Zhu Yingxiong thought that Xiao Chen was in a bad mood, so he didn't say much. He didn't know that Xiao Chen didn't know what kind of attitude he should have when facing Zhu Yingxiong now. Should he show his original face or continue to pretend to be a playboy? If he continued to pretend to be a playboy at this time, he was purely a hopeless big idiot. Maybe when Zhu Yingxiong saw that he was hopeless, he would stay away. Of course, this was unlikely to happen with Zhu Yingxiong's character. The Zhu family was strong, and as the grandson of the Zhu family, Zhu Yingxiong was still Xiao Chen's lackey without the slightest dissatisfaction. He was even more of a lackey than Chen Jinpeng. He was simply Xiao Chen's lackey. Xiao Chen naturally didn't want to deceive him anymore, but Xiao Chen was afraid that he would be exposed and be attacked by his enemies. Therefore, in the contradiction, Xiao Chen could only choose to be silent for the time being. In the corridor of the teaching building, Chen Jinpeng, Chao Yuliang, and the others were still putting on a wonderful scene of Street Fighter until the school's security team came and forcibly separated them. This school was invested and built by the Shen family, and the Shen family was naturally Shen Jingshuan's family. The school's security team leader was actually a Stage 2 inner force martial artist, and he was a martial artist who was about to break through to Stage 3. This was enough to show how powerful the Shen family was. This was also the reason why the Shen family stood proudly outside of the 9 aristocratic families. "Chao Yuliang, Chen Jinpeng, what's going on?" the security team leader shouted. To deal with these playboys, only the security team leader could do it himself. "Don't you know that fighting is prohibited in the school? Do you want to be expelled?" Chao Yuliang looked at Chen Jinpeng angrily. He was very angry, but he didn't dare to say anything about the fight. Although Xiao Chen was down and out, the children of the aristocratic families were always looking for trouble with each other in private. It couldn't be said in public. Once the school knew about it, they would be severely punished. Although it wasn't a big deal if these children were expelled from the school, this was the Shin family's school. If they were expelled, how humiliating would it be? They wouldn't be able to raise their heads in front of the children of the other aristocratic families. What's more, Chao Yuliang still wanted to pursue Qing Menjing. If he was expelled, how could he pursue her? How could he have the face to pursue her? Captain Shen, the aristocratic family's meeting is coming soon. Don't you know that there will be a competition between the younger generation? I and Qin Jinping have a competition in advance. It's different from fighting. Although Chao Yuliang felt wronged, he didn't forget to stare at Qin Jinping and asked, "Am I right?" Qin Jinping? Yes, Captain Shen. It's just that my strength is slightly higher than Brother Liang. Chao Yuliang's. So, I let the few of them fight together to balance out our strengths. Qin Jinping explained why Chao Yuliang's underlings had also joined the battle. Captain Shen naturally didn't believe their words, but he also knew that after Shao Qin was down and out, his underling Qin Jinping switched to Chao Yuliang's side. That was to say, Chao Yuliang and Qin Jinping were on the same side. They had no reason to fight. However, even if it was a competition, they couldn't kill each other, right? It was obvious that both of them were seriously injured, but since the parties involved said that they were fine, Captain Shen didn't want to cause more trouble. He waved his hand and said, "Okay, since you are fine, go to class quickly. Don't block here." Chapter 14. Chao Yuliang and Qin Jinping quickly nodded and left with their tails between their legs. However, after a few steps, Chao Yuliang heard Captain Shen's words that made him stagger and almost fall to the ground. Isn't that stupid? You can't beat each other to death even if you want to learn from each other. Isn't that stupid? When he walked to the corner of the teaching building and couldn't see Captain Shen behind him, Chao Yuliang stopped and looked at Qin Jinping gloomily. His eyes were as if he wanted to skin Qin Jinping alive. Qin Jinping, F***CKU. Don't think that I don't dare to do anything to you just because you're a martial artist at the second stage of inner force. Our Chao family's bodyguards can still kill you. Brother Liang. I really didn't mean it. I don't know what happened. I seemed to be confused just now, and then I didn't know anything until Captain Shen pulled me away. I didn't know what happened. Qin Jinping was so scared that his face turned pale. Although the Qin family wasn't weak, he was just a concubine's son in the Qin family. Wasn't it child's play for Chao Yuliang to teach him a lesson? Even if he was beaten and sent to the hospital, the Qin family wouldn't stand up for him for this matter, so he was so scared that he almost knelt down. Brother Liang, you have to believe me. Shao Chen has already fallen. Unless I'm stupid, I won't continue to be his follower. I'm not stupid like Zhu Yingxiong. Chao Yuliang frowned. What Qin Jinping said was very reasonable, and he also felt that Qin Jinping wasn't a fool. He wouldn't do such a stupid thing, but it just happened that Qin Jinping did such a stupid thing. You said you didn't know anything just now. How can you prove it? Chao Yuliang asked. This. How can I prove it? I humiliated Shao Chen in the basketball game yesterday. How could I be his accomplice? Brother Liang, please understand. Qin Jinping said carefully with a sad face. Chao Yuliang nodded. Logically speaking, Qin Jinping and Shao Chen broke up yesterday. What happened yesterday was more damaging to Shao Chen than today's beating of Shao Chen. After all, for a playboy like Shao Chen, being beaten was nothing, but losing his face in front of so many people was worse than death. Of course, Chao Yuliang had underestimated Shao Chen. The playboy who cared about face was just Shao Chen's disguise. The real Shao Chen didn't care about this at all. How could face be more important than life? Qin Jinping, I think you have schizophrenia. You'd better see a doctor. Chao Yuliang said coldly, forget about this matter. If there is a next time, I don't mind letting you live a life worse than death. Definitely not. Qin Jinping wiped the cold sweat on his forehead. I must have drunk too much last night. My mind is not clear. Yes, it must be. Be careful in the future. Xiao Yuliang rubbed his swollen face and said angrily. If it weren't for Qin Jinpeng, who used to be Xiao Chen's underling, humiliating Xiao Qin even more, Xiao Yuliang really wanted to kick Qin Jinpeng aside. But after thinking about it, he endured it and believed Qin Jinpeng for once. In a private room of a tea house, there were two middle-aged men sitting. One of them was wearing luxurious clothes. At first glance, it was obvious that he was a successful person in the business world. The other was wearing a white robe. At first glance, it was obvious that he was a powerful martial artist. However, the two were plotting something at the moment. After a while, the two obviously reached a consensus. Then, the two walked out of the private room one after another and left. The man in the white robe drove all the way back to the Qing family, the head of the 9 families. Young master, you're back. The master is in the meeting hall. He asked you to go there directly after you came back. A disciple of the Qing family said to him. This person was the young master of the Qing family and also Qing Menjing's father, Qing Zhongming. He was now a martial artist with stage 6 inner force. Among the younger generation, he was also a very powerful existence. I know. Qing Zhongming nodded and walked quickly to the meeting hall. At this moment, the old master Qing of the Qing family, Qing Tianqiu, was already sitting in the main seat of the meeting hall. In front of him stood Qing Zhongming's younger brother, Qing Zhongfan. Big brother, you're back. When Qing Zhongfan saw that Qing Zhongming had returned, he asked anxiously, how is it? Is there any news about third brother? No, I went to the warrior guild to ask. The other trial teams have all returned, except for Xiao Feng and third brother's trial team. Qing Zhongming sighed and said helplessly. Xiao Feng. I don't know if my son is dead or alive. I'm so angry. Qing Tianqiu slammed the armrest of the armchair and shouted angrily, oh right, how is Xiao Feng's little bastard? Is he dead? I heard that he jumped off a cliff and died. Did he get away with it? Father, Xiao Chen is not dead. The news of him jumping off a cliff is just a rumor. Qing Zhongming knew that Xiao Chen was not dead last night. It was just that old master Qing did not know. Not dead? Qing Tianqiu frowned. Zhongming, Zhongfan, what do you think? How should we deal with that little bastard Xiao Chen? When I think of him, I think of Zhongqian. Father, Xiao Chen is now in dire straits. Even if our Qing family is the leader of the 9 families, we can't go overboard. If the other families see this, they will think that our Qing family is too overbearing. Overbearing? I'm just that overbearing. Qing Tianqiu snorted coldly and said, Zhongqian's fate is unknown. It's all because of that bastard Xiao Feng's mistake. The son has to pay his father's debts. Zhongming, I know that Xiao Feng is your sworn brother. But think about it. Are they biological brothers or sworn brothers? Zhongming knows. Qing Zhongming's heart skipped a beat and he quickly responded. Then, tell me, how should we deal with Xiao Chen? It was not that Qing Tianqiu did not want to let go of a junior. It was just that his most outstanding son, Qing Zhongqian's fate was unknown. He had no way to vent his anger on the Xiao family. He could only pick a soft persimmon to pinch and vent his anger on Xiao Feng's playboy son. Anyway, Xiao Chen was a useless playboy. This kind of trash who could not cultivate inner strength and could not contribute to the family, the Xiao family would not fight with the Qing family. So, Qing Tianqiu vented his anger on Xiao Chen. Father, in fact, sometimes the pleasure of revenge does not necessarily come from killing someone. It comes from torturing someone. If Xiao Chen were to be tortured and humiliated, wouldn't it be more satisfying for you, father? Qing Zhongming asked. Oh. Tell me. You mean, we should torture and humiliate Xiao Chen? Qing Tianqiu listened to Qing Zhongming's words and was a little interested. Qing Zhongfan was also stunned. He looked at Qing Zhongming with some surprise. Qing Zhongming and Xiao Feng were sworn brothers. With this relationship, it was destined that Qing Zhongming should be biased towards Xiao Chen. However, How could he make such a suggestion? Could it be that Qing Zhongming was also angry with Xiao Feng? Chapter 15. However, Qing Zhongfan didn't say anything. Instead, he waited to see what would happen. Father, I have a good idea to torture and humiliate Xiao Chen. Qing Zhongming said, think about it. If a young master who used to be high and mighty becomes a follower or servant, what would it feel like? Servant? Are you saying that you sold him as a slave? Qing Tianqiu didn't quite understand what Qing Zhongming meant. If you sell him, we won't be able to see it. Who knows if the Xiao family will buy him back? Of course not. Qing Zhongming said and sneered. What if he becomes Menjing's servant? A young master who used to be high and mighty in the Xiao family, Menjing's fiancé, has now become Menjing's servant. What a huge drop. Even normal people can't stand it, let alone Xiao Chen, that foppish young master. This will probably make him feel worse than killing him. Oh. What you said is quite interesting. But will Xiao Chen be willing? I think he would rather die than do it, right? Qing Tianqiu nodded in agreement. Indeed, he also knew that these young masters from aristocratic families cared the most about their reputation, especially a foppish young master like Xiao Chen. Now, he had changed from a young master and Menjing's fiancé to Menjing's servant. This was equivalent to slapping him in the face. This would make him feel worse than killing him. Not willing? As far as I know, he's penniless right now. As long as I use a few tricks and let the school pick on him, I'll charge him some fees. If Xiao Chen can't afford it, he'll be expelled. At that time, he won't even have a place to live. If he's unwilling and wants to live, then he'll be at my mercy. A sinister smile flashed across Qing Zhongming's face. Good, this is a good idea. Qing Tianqiu agreed. Then it's settled. This drop is enough for that little bastard Xiao Chen to suffer. The more he feels, the more I can vent my anger. Father, then I will implement it. Qing Zhongming nodded and said calmly. Qing Zhongfan stood at the side and didn't speak. However, in his mind, he was thinking about the pros and cons of this matter. Logically speaking, Qing Zhongming shouldn't be so sinister. Wasn't this putting Xiao Chen to death? With Xiao Chen's foppish character, even if he could bear it at the beginning, after a long time, wouldn't it be suicide if he was ordered around as a servant? Could it be that Qing Zhongming really wanted to put Xiao Chen to death? Qing Zhongming went straight out of the council hall and went to work. It had to be said that the Qing family had great power in Songning City. When Xiao Chen just had his morning class, he received a notice from the school. Within today, he had to pay a sponsorship fee of 1 million. The reason was that Xiao Chen scored the last place in the whole school in the final exam last semester. If it was in the past, naturally, no one would find trouble with Xiao Chen because of such a small matter. He was the young master of the Xiao family. Not to mention that he scored the last place in the exam. Even if he didn't take the exam, what could the school say? But now it was different. The school clearly wanted to find trouble with Xiao Chen. Moreover, if he didn't pay the fee before school ended, then Xiao Chen would be expelled honorably. After learning this news, Xiao Chen's face was a little gloomy. It was true that he wanted to transfer to another school, but before he could get the transfer fee, the school asked him to pay the sponsorship fee first. Boss, don't take it to heart. Isn't it just 1 million? I'll help you settle it. Zhu Yingxiong didn't care. With the strength of the Zhu family, 1 million was nothing at all. In fact, for the previous Xiao Chen, 1 million was nothing. One of Xiao Chen's sports cars was worth tens of millions. This 1 million was just a drop in the bucket. However, when Zhu Yingxiong called his father's phone and learned that his source of income was also blocked, he was suddenly dumbfounded. Although it was true that the Zhu family's ancestors supported Zhu Yingxiong, the Qing family clearly wanted to mess with Xiao Chen. Zhu Yingxiong's father, Zhu Qifu, didn't have the courage of the ancestors. He didn't dare to help Xiao Chen at this juncture. It was fine that Zhu Yingxiong and Xiao Chen were close. That could be avoided with the friendship between the younger generation. But it was different if they wanted to take money out. Boss. My father froze my source of income. Damn, it's really killing me. After learning the news, Zhu Yingxiong was a little depressed and embarrassed to tell Xiao Chen. It's okay. Xiao Chen shook his head. It was obvious that the Qing family wanted to mess with him. Even if Zhu Yingxiong took out the money, he believed that the Qing family could make up 100 reasons to let the school expel him. This was not a matter of money at all. It's okay to drop out of school. We are still brothers. Take care of cool air for me. Xiao Chen patted Zhu Yingxiong's shoulder and sighed slightly. Without saying anything more, he stood up and walked out of the classroom. Boss, don't worry. As long as she is here, I will be here. I won't let anyone bully her. Zhu Yingxiong patted his chest and promised. For the current Zhu Yingxiong, this kind of thing was as easy as lifting a finger. As long as he spread the word, no one in the school would dare to touch Kerlin. Even Chao Yuliang and Chen Jinpeng wouldn't dare. They dared to touch Xiao Chen because of the Qing family's attitude. But because of Kerlin, they didn't need to fight with Zhu Yingxiong to death. Wasn't that stupid? Just protect her secretly. She is a stubborn and strong girl. She has her own persistence. Xiao Chen smiled at Zhu Yingxiong and strode to the classroom door. After listening to Xiao Chen's words, Zhu Yingxiong was slightly stunned. Such philosophical words didn't sound like something Xiao Chen would say. Could it be that the adversity produced the talented? After this incident, did Xiao Chen become more profound? Xiao Chen didn't care about how Zhu Yingxiong looked at him and went straight out of the classroom. To be honest, in this school, the only people worthy of Xiao Chen's nostalgia were Zhu Yingxiong and Kerlin. Miss Qing Menjiang, Xiao Chen thought that he wouldn't have anything to do with her in the future. As for Shen Jingxian, she was just a beautiful girl that Xiao Chen pursued in order to show off. Xiao Chen was very clear that Shen Jingxian would never like a playboy, young master like him. However, the only thing Xiao Chen could rely on now was the Elder Heaven Ancestor. With the cultivation formula taught by the Elder Heaven Ancestor and the money given to him by the Miss, it shouldn't be a problem to hold on for a while. Thinking of this, Xiao Chen's mood wasn't as bad as before. He quickly walked in the direction of the dormitory. In the dormitory, Xiao Chen still had some of his own clothes, which were bought before and placed there casually. He hadn't worn them yet. These clothes were nothing to Xiao Chen in the past, but now that Xiao Chen had no source of income, he would save as much as he could. He was going to take these clothes away. However, on the way to the dormitory, Xiao Chen was stopped by a car in front of him. Chapter 16. A car that could enter the campus was definitely not ordinary. Xiao Chen stopped and quietly looked at the car in front of him. He wanted to find some clues from the car, but the car's glass was covered with a dark film. Xiao Chen didn't know who was in the car. Bad intentions? Or? The car door opened, and a middle-aged man in a white robe got out of the car. This person was naturally Cheng Zhongming. Uncle Cheng? After Xiao Chen saw the person in the car, he couldn't help but be slightly surprised. He didn't expect that the person who got out of the car was actually Cheng Zhongming, Miss Qing Menjing's father. Xiao Chen, it seems that you have been expelled from the school and have nowhere to go, right? After Cheng Zhongming finished speaking, he didn't give Xiao Chen a chance to speak. Instead, he made a long story short. Now, I will give you a chance to survive. I am going to transfer Menjing to Songning Second High School. However, she lacks a follower by her side, which is a servant. Are you interested in going with her? Xiao Chen was stunned. He didn't expect Cheng Zhongming to give him such a chance. Whether it was a servant or not, Xiao Chen didn't care. What Xiao Chen cared about was that they could transfer to another school together. Moreover, there was actually a place for them to live. This was practically something that Xiao Chen could only dream about in the past. It seems that the school expelled me because of Uncle Cheng. Xiao Chen didn't answer Cheng Zhongming's words, but asked. Even if Xiao Chen didn't want to hide it from Qing Zhongming, the walls had ears. Xiao Chen didn't want to change too much. Only a good-for-nothing playboy would live longer. Xiao Chen, you also know that Uncle Qing can't help it. Qing Zhongming was slightly taken aback. He was a little surprised that Xiao Chen was able to guess it. However, after thinking about it, the Qing clan was the only one targeting him at the moment, and he had coincidentally appeared here to say these words. No matter how useless Xiao Chen was, he should be able to figure out the crux of the matter. Then, are you giving me charity again? Or do you want to humiliate me? Xiao Chen's tone was cold. He shouted at Qing Zhongming, I thought that you are my father's sworn brother. You are no different from my biological uncle, but my biological second uncle is no different from you. Are you here to laugh at me? However, in Xiao Chen's heart, he secretly said, Uncle Qing, I'm sorry. I know you are doing this for my own good. You want to find an excuse for me to survive, but I can't thank you. At least, before Xiao Chen had enough strength, it was impossible to expose his rational side. That would only make him die faster. Xiao Chen. Qing Zhongming smiled bitterly. He didn't know what to say as he looked at the angry Xiao Chen. Yes, he was actually very self-blaming. He didn't know whether his sworn brother was dead or alive, but he couldn't take care of his son. There were people on the school field. This scene was also seen by some observant people. But a bad life is better than a good death. I really have to thank Uncle Qing. Xiao Chen fiercely spat out these few words. The current Xiao Chen had the awkwardness of a hero being stumped by a penny. This was completely in line with his character in the past. After the rage, there was a deep helplessness. Xiao Chen had no way out. He could only give in. Then, get in the car. Qing Zhongming sighed and said to Xiao Chen. So, Xiao Chen got in Qing Zhongming's car under a group of mocking eyes. Qing Zhongming drove his own car and didn't bring a driver. There were some things that he couldn't do in the open. Although Xiao Chen's previous reaction made Qing Zhongming very uncomfortable and he couldn't explain it, if Xiao Chen's performance was passed to his father's ears, his plan would succeed. However, Xiao Chen's irritable playboy character made Qing Zhongming a little worried. The help he provided was only in secret. But how would Xiao Chen face the future? Uncle Qing, thank you. After Xiao Chen got in the car, he restored his calm expression. At present, it seemed that Qing Zhongming was a trustworthy person. Xiao Chen wasn't stupid. Qing Zhongming's approach wasn't to humiliate him, but to help him. Qing Zhongming was thinking about it. He was shocked by Xiao Chen's words. He turned his head and looked at Xiao Chen. His eyes were full of disbelief. Xiao Chen, who was blushing with me just now, actually became a plain thank you after getting in the car. Uncle Qing, in the past 2 days, I've thought through some things. I've gotten over it and understood some things. Although Qing Zhongming was trustworthy, Xiao Chen didn't hide anything from him. Just now, I shouted at you just for survival. You know, Qing Zhongming's eyes focused and looked at Xiao Chen in disbelief. Qing Zhongfan sent someone to follow him not far away. With Qing Zhongming's strength, he could naturally feel it, but Qing Zhongming didn't think that they could hear the conversation between him and Xiao Chen. He didn't expect Xiao Chen to be more careful than him. His father, Old Master Qing, couldn't be at ease with Qing Zhongming. After all, Qing Zhongming and Xiao Feng were sworn brothers in the past. He was afraid that he would let Xiao Chen lose, so it was understandable for Qing Zhongfan to send someone to follow him. However, what shocked Qing Zhongming was that Xiao Chen seemed to be more sensible than before. Xiao Chen, you actually thought it through? Qing Zhongming looked at Xiao Chen strangely. He was extremely surprised. After encountering a huge change, if I'm still stupid, wouldn't I die miserably? Xiao Chen smiled bitterly and said, yesterday, I was pushed off the cliff. What? That thing is true? Qing Zhongming's pupils instantly became needle-like. He looked at Xiao Chen in horror. The rumor is not false? Then you I hung on a tree branch and climbed up again. Xiao Chen naturally wouldn't tell the truth. Even if he trusted Qing Zhongming, he couldn't talk about the existence of the elder heaven ancestor and the cultivators. So that's how it is. Then it's really scary but not dangerous. Qing Zhongming frowned. Who wants to harm you? Our Qing family, without my father's approval, wouldn't do such a thing. This is also the reason why I feel strange. Someone wants to kill me. If Uncle Cheng has any news, you can tell me. I'll be on guard. The purpose of Xiao Chen saying so much was to let Qing Zhongming help him find the mastermind behind the scenes. The onlooker sees the game more clearly. Maybe if he stood at Qing Zhongming's height, he could see some clues. Moreover, it was also a great thing for Xiao Chen to have someone on his side in the aristocratic family level. Okay, I will pay attention to this matter. Qing Zhongming felt scared when he thought about it. If Xiao Chen really died yesterday, how could he face Xiao Feng? Moreover, even if it wasn't the Qing family who did it, in the eyes of the outside world, Xiao Chen committed suicide because he couldn't get over it. It was also related to the Qing family. Chapter 17. As for Xiao Chen's change, Qing Zhongming didn't think too much about it. After any upheaval in the family, after experiencing life and death, there would be some changes. The saying that one who survives a disaster is bound to have good fortune later on wasn't just said casually. Therefore, Qing Zhongming attributed all this to Xiao Chen almost dying, and his mentality changed. However, this change was what Qing Zhongming was happy to see. If Xiao Chen really didn't understand the meaning of letting him be a servant, and instead fiercely refused with a playboy's temper, then it would be really difficult for him to deal with it. Thank you, Uncle Cheng. Xiao Chen said, but I have a few sets of clothes in the dormitory. You also know my current financial situation, so I want to get them back. Okay, no problem. Qing Zhongming nodded and said, I will drive you there. Qing Zhongming's car drove in the direction of the dormitory building. Sure enough, after the car left, a young man with sunglasses took out his mobile phone and dialed a number. Brother Fan, Qing Zhongming came to the school. According to what he said, he expelled Xiao Chen. Sure enough, Xiao Chen was furious. He almost quarreled with Qing Zhongming, but maybe Xiao Chen had no way out. In the end, he was forced to compromise and get in Qing Zhongming's car. Oh. It seems that my big brother didn't do anything. Qing Zhongfan was relieved after listening. Brother Fan, should I continue to follow them now? The sunglasses man asked carefully. There's no need. He's just a piece of trash. Let him fend for himself. Don't worry about him. Someone else will go and kill him. Qing Zhongfan snorted disdainfully. Come back. Yes, Brother Fan. The sunglasses man nodded. After Qing Zhongfan hung up the phone, he quickly went to report to Old Master Cheng. Of course, if it weren't for Old Master Cheng's instructions, he wouldn't have sent people to follow Qing Zhongming so blatantly. Father, Big Brother went to Xiao Chen's school and expelled Xiao Chen. Then he found Xiao Chen and proposed to make Xiao Chen his servant. Xiao Chen quarreled with him, but in the end, he held back his anger and got into Big Brother's car. Qing Zhongfan told Qing Tianqiu the story in a simple and clear manner. Oh. That was great. His father killed my son. I want his son to live a life worse than death. Qing Tianqiu nodded and said angrily. Xiao Chen packed up his clothes and glanced at his dormitory. This dormitory made him somewhat nostalgic. It wasn't because he had lived here for a long time. Speaking of which, the real impression he had was last night. But it was this night that made Xiao Chen go from a trash to an extremely powerful high-end profession of cultivator. Looking at the cracked wall, Xiao Chen shook his head, picked up his clothes, and quickly went downstairs. However, when Xiao Chen was just about to get in the car, he heard the quarrel in the car. Dad, why did you let Xiao Chen be my servant? You even let us live together? Qing Menjing didn't expect that her father suddenly called her out of the classroom. After getting in the car, he made two proposals that made her collapse: transfer schools. Live together with Xiao Chen. Let's forget about transferring schools, but let a grown man live together with me. Is this considered cohabitation? Ahem. Menjing, I didn't ask you to live together. Do you understand? It's very popular now to share a room with a flight attendant or the campus belle. He and you are in separate rooms. He just takes care of you in your studies and daily life. Qing Zhongming explained. But, is there a difference? Qing Menjing was going crazy. Let my ex-fiancé be my servant? Those who don't know will think that I'm still in love. How do you want me to face others in the future? Won't others laugh at me to death? Menjing. Qing Zhongming's tone suddenly became serious. Something happened to your uncle Xiao Feng. Xiao Chen is his only son. I'm closer to him than a real brother. Xiao Chen is no different from my son. Now that the Qing family broke off the engagement and let the Xiao family kick him out of the house, I can't stop it. I can only provide some help to him in a cover-up situation, you mean? Qing Menjing wasn't stupid. She was scared before, but after listening to her father's explanation, she immediately understood what her father meant. On the surface, it seemed that the Qing family was messing with Xiao Chen, turning him from a superior young master to a servant. But in fact, Qing Zhongming was providing a living environment for Xiao Chen. Yes, Menjing, Dad knows that you are a kind girl. You don't want your Uncle Xiao to be sad, right? Asked Qing Zhongming. All right. Qing Menjing nodded her head in agreement, but in her heart, she still held a grudge against Xiao Chen. In the past, I was his fiancé, and he actually chased after the commoner school belle in front of me, and chased after my bestie, Xin Jingxian. Now that he has fallen into my hands, watch how I deal with him. Miss Qing agreed to her father's proposal. She had the face of Xiao Feng, and she also wanted to retaliate against Xiao Chen. Women were very vengeful. But, it can't be just me and Xiao Chen living together, right? Miss Qing was a little scared. Although Xiao Chen was now down and out, and he was her servant, with Xiao Chen's previous bad reputation, what if he got aroused in the middle of the night and pushed her down? I'm going to rent a villa for you near the new school. Of course, it is also a shared house. There are other tenants in it. So, it doesn't matter, right? Qing Zhongming also considered this. Although he didn't mind his daughter being pushed down by Xiao Chen, in this situation, if Xiao Chen dared to do so, he would definitely die. Although his daughter was his, the decision was made by old Master Qing. Okay. Miss Qing breathed a sigh of relief. Xiao Chen stood outside the car. He was a little dumbfounded. Is my reputation so bad? It seems that I am still a virgin, right? Well, but even Miss Qing was deceived. It seems that my acting is really good. In fact, Qing Zhongming had long noticed Xiao Chen, but Xiao Chen was outside the car. Qing Zhongming didn't think that he could hear the conversation inside the car. He thought that Xiao Chen saw Qing Menjing got in the car first, so he deliberately didn't get in, leaving Qing Zhongming and Qing Menjing space to talk. With Qing Zhongming's level of internal energy, if he wanted to hear the words inside and outside the car clearly, he couldn't not be close. This was because the car was modified to be soundproof, and Xiao Chen was an ordinary person who couldn't even cultivate internal energy. It was even more impossible for him to hear what was said inside the car. However, Xiao Chen heard it, and even Xiao Chen himself was a little shocked. Aren't you shocked? Smart eyes and ears, this is also the ability of a cultivator. When your divine sense, that is, your spiritual force is strong enough to a certain extent, not only can you affect other people's thoughts like me, but you can also hear other people's conversations from far away. Elder Heaven Ancestor's voice sounded in Xiao Chen's ear. I say, Elder Heaven Ancestor, you are addicted to peeping at my thoughts. Xiao Chen was a little speechless. I'm afraid that Elder Heaven Ancestor also knew that he was a virgin. I can't help it. I am also in your body. I know what you are thinking. Elder Heaven Ancestor pretended to be helpless, but his shameless tone betrayed him. He certainly didn't want to listen. Then why can't I hear your thoughts? Xiao Chen felt that it was a little unfair. You can, when your strength is stronger than mine, you can. Elder Heaven Ancestor said. But, you have to wait. Xiao Chen rolled his eyes, too lazy to pay attention to this old pervert. You're tuning into the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.